Good evening. Tonight's regular meeting of the Planning and Transportation Commission is called to order. Today we do not have any AB 2449 requests. Chair Clements is absent due to illness, and it's an excused absence. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Anand?
Present.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Present.
Commissioner Tapias?
Present.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Present.
And Chair Clements is excused.
The next item is the approval of the October 6, 2025 minutes. Does anyone have any revisions or discussion? May I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second that.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Tapias?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Yes.
And Chair Clements is excused.
This item is for public comment for items not on the agenda today. If you would like to make a public comment for an item not on the agenda, please fill out a request to speak form located at the back of the chambers and submit to city staff. Or you may raise your hand when called on for public comment. If you are on Zoom, you may join via the Zoom link or call 1-669-900-9128 and enter meeting ID 886-3546-7439. You virtually raise your hand by clicking on reactions and then the raise hand icon. If joining by phone, please press *9 and then *6 to unmute when called upon. Are there any? We don't see anyone in the council chambers who's wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda. Lynette, is there anyone online who have raised their hand?
Yes, we have one hand raised. And caller Estelle.
Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm raising my hand because I have a question, which is I emailed all of the planning members regarding the Britton Avenue project, and I wanted to just confirm that that email was received.
Through the chair, yes, that email was received and was forwarded to our Public Works and Traffic Engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Estelle, for writing and for checking back in. Lynette, are there any other raised hands?
There are none.
Thank you. So we can close public comment. Do I have a motion?
I move to close public comment.
In a second.
I second.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Tapias?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Yes.
And Chair Clements is excused.
This item is a public hearing. I get to read this whole thing. Staff will present a report on the history, physical features, etc. on today's item, followed by staff's recommendations. If applicable, staff may make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had the opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out speakers forms found at the back of the room and hand it to staff prior to addressing the commission. The speaker should come up to the microphone during the public hearing period and speak, since the meeting is being recorded. This will assist us in preparing the minutes. So today's item is on item 7A, downtown specific plan. This is consideration of 4 resolutions recommending that the San Carlos City Council adopt a resolution approving the addendum to the City of San Carlos 2045 General Plan Reset Environmental Impact Report, adopt a resolution amending the San Carlos General Plan Land Use Map, Land Use Element, and Circulation and Scenic Highways Element, introduce an ordinance to amend the San Carlos zoning map and municipal code, Title 18 zoning, and introduce an ordinance to adopt the San Carlos Downtown Specific Plan. Does staff have a presentation on this item?
Yes, we do. Good evening, Vice Chair Bundy, and good evening, Commissioners. Lisa Porras, Planning Manager for the City's Advanced Planning Team. It is a pleasure to be here this evening. So I'd like to say, just to kick us off, that on behalf of the project team and the city staff team that has been working on this and assisting the project team, we are very excited to be here this evening. We have reached a really important milestone over the past 3 years, and we are very happy to present to you, the Commission, for your consideration, the Public Draft Downtown Specific Plan. Oh, I'm making a rookie mistake. It's not on. There we go. So to that end, I'd like to just take a moment to let you know who's joining me this evening. From our consultant team, we have Poonam Narkar with WRT, Rohit Tak with WRT. We are also joined both by Mark Spencer and Brian Canepa with WTrans. Carly Kaufman is joining us online. She's from Rincon Consultants. And then we also have joining us online David Shiver with BAE. On the city staff team, the core team, joining me this evening is Al Sabay, our Community Development Director, Brendel Bustos, our Senior Planner, Hanya Hushmande, our Senior Traffic Engineer. But we also have a great team of my colleagues joining me here this evening that have also been working to support this plan. That includes Andrew Douglas, our Senior Management Analyst, Sajudi Hawk, our Economic Development and Housing Manager, Akanksha Chopra, she's joining us virtually. She's our Senior Sustainability Manager, Rucha Dande, our Principal Planner in Current Planning, who you're very familiar with regarding the recent Objective Design Standards. And then, of course, Andrea is also joining us this evening, our Assistant Community Development Director. So, our story began in 2021 when the City Council adopted a strategic goal to ensure that we develop a plan for the downtown that meets the needs of its residents today and also the community members tomorrow. So this includes everyone, businesses, all the different stakeholders that we reached out to. And since that time, we have obviously kicked off the project in 2022. And over the past 3 years, we've worked with the community, an advisory committee that was appointed by the City Council. We held study sessions. We offered workshops and open houses. We passed out flyers. We offered online surveys. We evaluated many trade-offs. We received endorsements along the way, and we adopted a downtown streetscape master plan just earlier this year in the month of April. And now today, on November 3rd, we present to you for consideration the downtown specific plan for the adoption process. Because I know many members of the public in San Carlos share a very heartfelt passion for what happens in our downtown and are here this evening or are here watching us online and will be participating online, I wanted to provide some context before we get into the details of the project. Essentially, there are 3 major efforts in play. The first, which is tonight's focus, is, of course, our downtown specific plan, depicted on the graphic on the left. In the middle is our adopted streetscape master plan, which we just completed this year. And then to the far right is our very first implementation project, otherwise known as Phase 1A, Harrington Park, which is currently undergoing technical documentation for design engineering drawings that are going to be presented to our City Council on Monday, November the 10th. And that's when the Council will consider those construction drawings and when the Council will consider directing staff to advertise to bid. So along the way, of course, we get a lot of different comments regarding the downtown, but I kind of wanted to frame it for the community and for ourselves as a friendly reminder on where we stand with each of these different efforts. For tonight's agenda, as our vice chair introduced during the item, we have 4 resolutions for the commission's consideration this evening. We'll go over those in just a moment. We'll give a presentation on the downtown specific plan, and then we'll take questions from the commission. And our recommendation is to group each of the chapters together for a total of 6 different groups and kind of walk through your questions as you may have them on any of the chapters listed here in this proposed grouping. Then we would recommend taking public comment, whereby the public can comment on any of the chapters, and then we'll return to the commission for discussion. And again, we can go through the groups one by one so we can organize and make sure staff receives your clear direction and is able to respond to your questions in a way that helps us follow the outline of the specific plan. And then finally, at the end, we'll consider, or the commission will consider taking action or giving staff direction. So with that, with the preparation of the downtown specific plan, it was necessary for us to make several amendments to some of the city's existing regulatory documents, including the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance needs to be amended in order to receive or codify the newly adopted downtown specific plan. So there's some recommendations in there. And then in compliance with CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, we needed to prepare an addendum to our recently certified 2045 General Plan Environmental Impact Report, or EIR. So this would be the consideration of the commission this evening, and in this particular order, to start first with recommending whether the City Council should approve the addendum to the 2045 General Plan Reset. Another resolution to recommend City Council amend the San Carlos General Plan land use map for reasons which I will cover in my presentation this evening, the land use element to reference the downtown specific plan, and to update some of the policy language that recognizes the completion of the streetscape master plan, the downtown specific plan, etc., as well as a circulation and scenic highways element. The third is to recommend that the City Council introduce an ordinance. An ordinance is needed to amend the San Carlos zoning map. Zoning map needs to be consistent with the land use map, and the zoning ordinance itself, which would include language to receive the downtown specific plan. And then finally, a resolution to recommend the City Council introduce another ordinance that actually adopts the downtown specific plan. So now the downtown specific plan. So what is the downtown specific plan? Essentially, it is our legal regulatory policy document that will guide future development, what happens in the downtown public realm, and what actions we will take to ensure that our downtown is inclusive, vibrant, and achieves all of the goals that is set forth in the downtown specific plan itself. We consider it our North Star. It's a decision-making tool that will be used over the years ahead. It's a regulatory tool because it also includes development standards for new development, including any capital improvements that the city undertakes. And that'll all be to the year 2045. It provides goals, policies, action items, like I mentioned, standards for new development. And along the way, amendments can occur to the downtown specific plan as conditions change, as new state laws may be passed or changed, and in response to any future direction from the city leadership regarding adjustments that may need to be made. So while it is adopted, we're hoping this year, but if not very soon, and because it's a 20-year document, I did want to emphasize that it's not set in stone like any other regulatory tool the city has. We can always make amendments to those. So the downtown specific plan area, what the downtown specific plan covers, is an area that's approximately 67 acres. It's bounded by Holly Street to the north, Greenwood Avenue to the south, and then Walnut Street to the west, and then El Camino Real to the east. In preparation of the downtown specific plan, our community engagement strategy was a multi-pronged effort whereby it was conducted through an appointed 18-member advisory committee, representing a number of different interests of the cities, from property owners to business owners to special needs to residents to at-large members to member of the Chamber of Commerce. It was a wide and diverse range of individuals that worked with us over the course of 3 years, up until this year and not so long ago. In addition to this advisory committee known as the DTAC, we held community-wide workshops whereby all members of the community, the broader community, could attend. These were workshops and open houses, both offered virtually and in person. And as I mentioned before, we had issued a number of different online surveys, and we had meetings with individual stakeholder groups during the course of this process. And all of that input went into two interconnected documents, the first being the Streetscape Master Plan that was adopted earlier this year, and a lot of that input also goes into an informed preparation of the downtown specific plan. And we heard quite a bit of information. In fact, in your packet, there is a document that's over 1,000 pages long with a lot of the raw data that was gathered during the course of this project. And we heard many things, and with many ideas and many requests for offerings for more public art, more events, more activities to do downtown, more outdoor seating, more plazas, more lighting in alleys for safety purposes, requests for more shade, more canopies, more landscaping or greening of our downtown, looking at a mix of uses and different offerings for folks to come and enjoy our downtown. So this is just a snapshot of many of the things that we heard, but these are most of the common requests that came across our way during the course of outreach. In addition to that, we also heard a lot of concerns about losing parklet spaces from the businesses, concerns about changing parking to parallel parking and what that might do to congestions, recognizing that some stores are really struggling. What could we do to ensure we help local businesses or small business startups? Concerns about, the fiscal feasibility, potential traffic on Laurel Street, and some, of course, not so embracing of the idea to close the 700 block, which, of course, has already happened, and City Council made that determination. And what this plan aims to do is to balance out the desires of the community along with the concerns that we've heard along the way. As I mentioned, there are many different action items for future direction. This project is certainly not the end of the process. It's really the beginning, because if you look through the policy documentation, there's a lot of different action items for future work in front of us. And we want to, through this plan, we're committing to doing that work and investigating and working through these issues that are very important to the community, and we want to be able to resolve those. So now I'm going to get into chapters 3 through 11. By design, I'm skipping the first introductory chapter with the vision and the guiding principles. I think we've all have been able to see those and understand those and what those principles were that guided the policy development in the downtown specific plan. So I'd like to focus on what are some of the key highlights in the specific plan that's before you this evening. So I want to start first with chapter 3, which is land use and urban design. And in chapter 3, you will find a land use map and a zoning map, and those maps are consistent. Our approach was to take our current land use designations, which are distributed the same way across all properties, have the same intensities, densities, and FARs, and have the same building heights, with one exception, which I'm going to talk about, and really imprint those into the downtown specific plan, because with these designations comes specific development standards. So and those are slightly different than what would be the case citywide. But for the most part, our biggest move was what happens in the public right-of-way, but a little less so on land use distribution and intensities. None of the densities, none of the heights have changed. So this image here just shows the corresponding zoning designations. We maintained the existing zoning designation names. MUD 120 is still MUD 120 in the downtown, and so forth. Same approach for zoning. The exception that I would like to talk about refers to a property at 1250 San Carlos Avenue, which is also known as the site for the San Mateo Transit District. And I'd like to make a correction. In my staff report, I wrote San Mateo County Transportation Authority, but it's the actual San Mateo Transit District is the correct name of the agency. They own the property at 1250 San Carlos Avenue, which is shown here on the left-hand side in a dark pink and a light pink diagonal hatch. The colors on the map here represent the land use designation. And so our recommendation for facts that are as noted in the staff report under this particular section, in recognition that this San Mateo County Transit District will be moving to the city of Millbrae, perhaps in 2026, is what our understanding is, that there was a real opportunity to look at this site and leverage its development potential. That is where the idea came from. And there are several policies that we have in our housing element that always is, that points us to look at potential opportunities. So that's where this idea came from. We presented this idea to Samtrans, and they will be commenting on tonight's meeting on why they want something else. But because this is a 20-year long-range plan, and because our goals are to really promote and leverage the use of sites, especially when it comes to housing, we thought this would be a wonderful opportunity. So under our proposal, it would be changing the land use designation from mixed use, 75, 100 units to the acre, to a mixed use 90 to 120. And what the 75 and the 90 mean is these are minimum density requirements, which are somewhat new to the city of San Carlos. When the city went through its housing element update back in 2023, one of the key strategies was to propose and adopt minimum density requirements to ensure that we can meet our regional housing needs allocation numbers. Those allocation numbers increased by a factor of 300%. So we needed to be very intentional on how we're going to be able to meet the RHNA, which is why we adopted minimum density requirements. And so there is a change for this particular site to be consistent with the property just behind it, which is already mixed use 90 to 120. And this slide here just shows what that would look like under a zone change. Again, recognizing that land use and zoning need to be consistent. So the zoning designation would go from mixed use downtown mixed use downtown core 100, which is the purple, to a mixed use downtown 120, which is the light purple. So we expect, as I mentioned before, to receive some comments from Samtrans this evening, including their economist, who would like to present some information for the Commission's consideration about why this project may not pencil today in today's market. But we also just wanted to acknowledge that a lot of housing projects are having a difficult time penciling in today's market condition. Because this is a long-term plan, we're hoping that the feasibility for a successful project can improve over time. And we also want to acknowledge that through state density bonus provisions, developers of projects can still ask for waivers or concessions under the state density bonus law, and Samtrans would be afforded those same provisions as well if they needed to utilize them into making a project work. With respect to development standards, I would say most of the development standards have stayed the same. There are some slight adjustments, and what I would like to share in this particular slide is a slight adjustment to recognize that the ground floor minimum height is being recommended to be increased from a minimum of 12 feet to a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 16 feet, which would allow for a more, modern or contemporary ground floor building height to ensure that we have a good ground floor retail space that meets the needs of the market. Otherwise, along Laurel Street, the same standards that apply today would be carried forward in the downtown specific plan, which is a maximum of 4 stories with a building step back at the 3rd story. We had originally proposed a step back at the 4th-story, but upon proposing this to the council, they directed staff to maintain it at the 3rd story. So that is what is reflected here in this diagram. Looking at San Carlos Avenue and sort of kind of a segue to the Samtrans site that I just discussed, on the left-hand side, and this would be for the 1200 block, this is 1200 San Carlos Avenue looking towards the Caltrain station. On the left-hand side, you see a 6-story massing, which would be the site for the Samtrans building. So under a new zoning designation of MUD 120, that would allow 6 stories at a maximum height of 75 feet, and the step back would occur at the 5th story. On the other hand, on the other side or the south side of the street, the building, all 4 stories would be allowed to align. So you have a consistency in building massing up to the 4th story on both sides of the street, but on the Samtrans site at the 5th and 6th stories, it would need to be pulled back. So that's one minor adjustment to development standards that we're making in the downtown specific plan. I would say we're proposing. So now moving on to land use policies, some of the key, most important policies that seem to be under consideration are policies to ensure that downtown is a vibrant and activated downtown. And there are multiple complementary policies addressing this goal to really activate the downtown. And they're located here on the screen, and they're also in Chapter 3. And one of the key action items, going back to some of the action items that we're looking at to do in the future, is Action LU-6A, which directs the city to conduct additional research and evaluation of the city's formula business ordinance and consider removing constraints. So as this commission may recall, during a previous study session, we were looking at changing the formula business ordinance from a conditional use permit to a minor use permit. And when we presented that to our city council, they requested that we take a step back and really spend some more time evaluating it. So there's no change to the formula business ordinance in the current regulations that would be adopted when the downtown specific plan is adopted, but we do have an action item that directs us to conduct further evaluation of the ordinance. With respect to land use regulations, or what you can use or what you can do on the property, we made some minor amendments for a few land use categories. For residential, following the objective design standards, we took the direction that residential needs to be allowed on the ground floor, with the exception in the downtown core. And again, the downtown core consists of 5 blocks, the 1100 and 1200 blocks of San Carlos Avenue, and then the 600, 700, and 800 of Laurel Street. So in the downtown core, which makes up those 5 blocks I just mentioned, you can't do residential on the ground floor, but outside of those areas, we need to permit residential on the ground floor. Other minor adjustments that we made is we wanted to ensure that we had a mix of uses and mix of offerings, which is what we heard a lot from the community. We decided to allow small, community centers, gathering spaces that could be potentially located in the downtown core, including instructional services. Right now, that is allowed with a minor use permit, and we're making a proposed adjustment to allow that by right, but require applicants to submit a pickup and drop-off plan for those instructional services, similar to the one that was recently approved in the downtown core. For pet stores, government offices, and cultural institutions, we want to maintain the current requirement for a conditional use permit for these uses, but look at expanding those as possibilities into the downtown core, should one want to go into that area. And then one change where we said we do not want to allow this use, believe it or not, we had automobile vehicle sales and leasing allowed or permitted by right in our downtown core. And that's a particular use where we want to allow in other locations, but not in the downtown core. So those make up the minor amendments to land uses in the downtown specific plan. So moving on to Chapter 4, Prosperity and Economic Development. Again, in this particular chapter, you will find additional policies focused on activating the downtown, making sure that we continue to have an activated downtown by ongoing evaluation of our zoning, continuing to look at that, evaluate our mix of uses, what kinds of uses are locating in our downtown core, and ensure that all of our placemaking strategies are in place and are executed. We are making a clear statement that we want to be proactive and business friendly to businesses wanting to come into our city, whether that's a new business that wants to start, continue operating, maintain that business in the city over time, or grow. We want to really have that proactive, business friendly approach. We're looking at implementing branding and marketing strategies. You'll find that in the plan. More programming of community events, cultural activities, all types of things that we can do to really attract residents and visitors and coming to our downtown and marketing our downtown, having people come here, they learn about our city, they see what businesses are here, they may decide to come back. I guess complementary to that would be to ensure that our pedestrian realm, our public realm, is one that is very safe and comfortable and easy to navigate, that once you're here, we have a very good, walkable, inviting downtown with really good wayfinding. And then another policy looks at possible ways where we can use some new space through the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan, the idea for a new plaza on the 600 block of Laurel Street to possibly use some space in that area where we can showcase some small business startups in that area and really kind of look to enhance the space with electrical outlets so that it's really plug and play and it's really conducive to the types of activities we'd like to see in those areas. So that's Chapter 4, Prosperity and Economic Development. With mobility and connectivity, here in this particular chapter, we're drawing a lot and we're recognizing all of the strides we made in our downtown streetscape master plan and really uplifting those concepts in the streetscape master plan and advancing them forward as policy language. So in this particular chapter, we have policies that call for improving our streets with wider sidewalks, making sure there's high visibility crosswalks, incorporating ADA compliant infrastructure into those new street designs, as well as making sure that we have active transportation bicycle lanes, protected bicycle lanes in place with improvements of different street segments, and really look at ways to enhance the function and visibility and safety of the alleys that we have in and around the downtown core. So next, I'm just going to go through a couple of policies that relate to all the different modalities that people use to navigate in and around our downtown. The first are policies related to the pedestrian experience. Here, we're really recognizing the 700 block of Laurel Street as a pedestrian-only plaza. It would be a dismount zone, as our consultants have clarified before, and to really look at ways to prioritize the pedestrian experience by establishing a pedestrian priority zone, which is the downtown core. Those 5 blocks would really be enhanced for greater pedestrian comfort, accommodating more pedestrians, recognizing that we need space for more pedestrians as more people will be visiting and more people will be living in and around our downtown. For the bicycling experience, we recognize policies that direct us to install protected bicycle lanes with vertical buffers, green striping for high visibility, and also to support that, provide ample bicycle parking, including establishing bicycle hubs in key locations in the downtown area. And then policies for a better transit experience, we are looking at ways to enhance our bus stops, improving including the first and last mile connections to and from Caltrain, and really look at implementing our active transportation infrastructure. Active meaning bicycle lanes, pedestrians, things that, you rely on human mobility efforts to get around. The policies also direct us to coordinate with Samtrans and make sure we adhere to their bus stop design guidance when we look at designing bus stops in and around our downtown. And then finally, overall, we have policies to ensure that throughout the course of this plan and into the future, that we have a response to ensure a balanced network. We want to make sure that people can get to the downtown, know where to park, but we're not necessarily encouraging a lot of throughput traffic because, again, we're prioritizing pedestrians, we're prioritizing bicycles. So when conditions warrant, should there be more traffic or when growth calls for it, if it's needed, these are one of the trade-offs that we considered way back when we were working through the design concepts for the Streetscape Master Plan. We came up with an idea to potentially use Hawley Street for swing lanes, and these particular swing lanes would be the way that they're defined is where you convert parking lanes and you change them into travel lanes at particular times of day. We kind of already do this on Hawley Street going out towards the freeway, but if needed, and there would be studies, this would be something that's not done obviously right away, but as we look at changes to San Carlos Avenue in combination with traffic volumes and future growth and all of that, this is a potential strategy that we could pick up and use should we need it. So the plan really calls that out as a potential option for the city to consider. With respect to parking and transportation demand management. Again, transportation demand management being a body of tools that cities use to help manage the amount of traffic generated from new developments. This is all found in the next chapter, Chapter 6, and there are a combination of different things that address parking and future TDM. The first and foremost is recognition of AB 2097, which removed parking minimums within a certain amount of distance between our Caltrain stop and our bus stop. So that applies to much of the downtown area. And then in terms of strategies that we can use to help manage the amount of traffic generated by new development, we're looking at unbundled parking, shared parking, obviously compliance with transportation demand management strategies. Concurrently, the city's working on with the consultant team on a citywide effort for those amendments, which will come eventually, not in the somewhat near future, to the Planning Commission. And looking at ways to allow flexible use of the curb space. So these are a combination of different factors that we would employ. And we recognize here in the plan that because anticipation of new growth, new housing, and because of AB 2097, we're going to need to have more management on our parking resources. And the policy and direction is to really manage all of our parking resources, both on site with new development or on street as a coordinated shared system. And there are a number of different recommendations presented in the plan, including upgraded enforcement, but it is not a silver bullet sort of strategy. There would need to be a combination of different strategies put in place. And we can answer any questions you have on those this evening. Moving on to public realm, this chapter really is another chapter that really elevates and lifts the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan into specific policies. Presented on the slide here is a graphic indicating kind of the centerpiece or what really is the elevated public realm anticipated through the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan and the Downtown Specific Plan. So there are policies to implement the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan itself and make sure that we're enhancing the downtown core with new plazas and these vibrant community gathering spaces that we want to see in our downtown. The next section I want to go over with the commission is more dense, if you will. I wanted to carefully walk you through the outdoor dining and retail display standards that are part of the downtown specific plan. And this is specifically because we have a lot of interest and questions on what would these new standards be. And of course, the new standards don't come into play until the new street designs are constructed. And in the meantime, we would adhere to our current standards for outdoor dining. And that's notwithstanding the parklet situation that we find ourselves with today as a result of the pandemic in 2020. Those were allowed as sort of an emergency means to make sure the business could thrive in an unknown and uncertainty. But we want to move back through a policy document. We need to move back to the standards that we have currently in place. So if anybody were, for example, were to remove a parklet today and wanted to have an official outdoor dining establishment following the city rules, then they would work with the city and follow the standards for design and tables and chairs and what you can and can't have in the public right-of-way. However, I also want to make it clear that staff has not received any direction to do anything with the parklet, so there's no policy or an action item that says by such and such time, parklets need to be removed. That's a separate conversation, which would be subject to either the decision of a restaurant operator to do so, again, not preventing them from doing it today, or direction from the council when a street segment needs to be improved for construction. So with that, I would like to walk you through the outdoor dining and retail display. So by name, the city has long had standards for folks to have tables and chairs out in the public right-of-way, and also for merchants to have retail display out in the right-of-way. So with the new streetscape designs, we would be able to increase the amount of area that we currently have in our code today. This is not an increase from parklets, because parklets extend way beyond what we have in our code, but what's presented here would be almost a doubling of the amount of space currently in our code. So we have standards for the 600 and 800 block to be a space that is 8 feet from the building face. On the 700 block, that would increase to a little bit more to 9 feet. And then along El Camino Real, at least a minimum of 5 feet. I know the council is looking at ways where we can get more, but that would really depend upon future improvements to El Camino Real, but at least 5 feet. And then on other streets, the requirement is that whatever you do, you have to have at least a 4-foot clear path for pedestrians. As part of this plan and as part of the streetscape improvements, and pursuant to requests for additional outdoor dining space, we looked at other ways that we could get more outdoor dining into the public right-of-way. And we looked at what is referred to as the tree strip zone, which is shown on the lower left diagram in green as a space where tables and chairs could go in between a light pole or just sort of in between any kind of streetscape furnishings where permissible, because the details of the street designs are just that, so detailed, and we don't know exactly where that pole is going to go. It may not be that every business directly in front of it gets the space, but if it's available, we want to be able to allow that, and there would be a process for that and requirements for what you could and couldn't do in that tree strip. But there's things like fire hydrants and bicycle racks and street lamps, so if the space is available, that would certainly be open to be able to use for additional outdoor dining. With respect to operation and maintenance, mostly everything stayed the same. The only change that we are proposing in the downtown streetscape, in the downtown specific plan, is to allow folks to leave their furnishings outdoors. In the current code, it requires that they be brought in every night, because that can be quite cumbersome, and because it's kind of already happening already and it seems to be going okay, we want to be able to let operators keep their outdoor dining furnishings in their spaces in the right-of-way overnight. The other thing that we are proposing a change for is the outdoor dining, the amount of area For the width of your storefront, the amount of area you have is what you get for outdoor dining. So we don't want businesses to sublease spaces from their next door neighbors or somewhere else. It's pretty much depending upon what the width of your storefront is. You're allowed to have whatever's in front of your business. And so that would be a new regulation included in the downtown specific plan. With respect to design, we still are maintaining our standards that furnishings be durable, no plastic chairs or tables, and we still are maintaining allowing barriers. If folks want to put up a barrier around their outdoor dining or around their retail display area, they can do that. But if so, what we're putting in place is a new maximum 4 feet in height for that barrier. So that can be any height for a planter or any height for a plant or the whole thing. It just needs to be a maximum 4 feet. And then we're specifically calling out things we don't want, such as jersey barriers, ropes, or metal crowd barriers. And we also do not want to see any kind of flat platforms or floor coverings on top of our new streetscape design. So those are specifically called out in the regulations. Continuing on with design aspects, we're making it very clear, abundantly clear, that no permanent attachments or shelters are allowed. And we're also making a modification to the colors for umbrellas, for them to be a solid color, which is what the code required before, but we are directing that those colors be drawn from the city's official color palette. We also want to maintain that none of the awnings or umbrellas should have any kind of generic advertising, or signage permitted on the awnings and umbrellas, recognizing that we have a sign ordinance and signage is already permitted through that particular ordinance in Title 18 zoning. Continuing on with a few more design standards, we are specifically calling out with clarity that we would allow retractable windscreens and any kind of retractable curtain perpendicular to the building, as noted here in these drawings. Not drawings, but pictures. And these pictures are not intended to be what must be done. They're inspirational photos, and any kind of awning or windscreen would be submitted in conjunction with a restaurant operator application, and we could evaluate it at that time. But the takeaway really is that we would allow those where previously we did not allow, so we want to allow some protection from the elements, so we want to include those. With respect to moving on to retail operation and maintenance standards, there are a few things that we are changing. Number one is the same for outdoor dining. Any kind of appurtenances may remain outdoor overnight. So we want to bring parity with retail and outdoor dining. We also are saying that the retail display area, again, may also not be subleased to another business. And I think, let me make sure I just didn't miss anything. Oh yes, I'm coming to that next. Moving on with design standards for outdoor retail. The same thing with awnings and umbrellas. We want the umbrellas to be a solid color that's consistent with what we have today, but again, drawing from the city's color palette, and then no generic advertising or signage. That would be consistent. One of the things that we are changing is that the current code on the left, under existing, it limits the display and sales area to 25% of the width of the frontage of the storefront. And what we want to do is bring that in parity with outdoor dining and have retail display utilize the full area or the full width of their storefront for anything that they would like to display in front of their store. Again, no platforms or floor coverings, and then no mannequins and outdoor display figures. Those would not be allowed. And then these are the standards for the new opportunity to have additional outdoor dining in the tree strips. These primarily relate to buffers between contiguous seating so that you can ensure that pedestrians can get through if they're parking along the 600 or 800 blocks, that they're able to get out and not be met with a wall of tree strip dining, so wanting to have some buffer there. Also clearances from utility devices, setbacks from fire hydrants, and enough placement away from the curb face to allow for passengers to get out of their cars. And where there's ADA parking spaces, that would be they would be required to have 3-foot clear path for each vehicle door. And then the tables and chairs in the tree strip, we want them to be of the same quality and same design as those associated with the primary outdoor dining area. So we want some consistency in the design there. In the tree strip area, we wouldn't want to have any portable heaters or electrical lines or lightings being strung from the primary restaurant area across the sidewalk and into the tree strip zone. So these are additional areas, and it's outdoor dining light, if you will, but it still provides that additional space on a nice day where you can have additional space to eat outside. So thanks for letting me get through that. I know that was a lot of detail. We can answer your questions, of course, on that and anything else. But I'd like to move on to public art. And so with the downtown streetscape master plan and the specific plan, there's a really wonderful opportunity to get more public art into our downtown. And in the specific plan, there are policies that provide us with direction and decision-making tools to inquire about public art and look at ways where we can integrate that art into the streetscape in other locations, such as improved alleys, into the plazas and other civic spaces, as well as encouraging art in private development. We also want to draw upon our cultural and ecological heritage as an inspiration starting point. We also have policies that direct us to maintain and preserve the art that we have there, such as the Balancing Act or Blue Man sculpture located in Harrington Park. And we're looking at ways where we can create, maybe some site-specific artworks or even temporary exhibits in some of the spaces that we're creating in our downtown. And then also through all of that, we recognize and would adhere to the City of San Carlos's official public arts master plan, which we do have one, and use that and follow that to implement new art in our downtown. As far as the locations, this may be an image that looks familiar to you, but through the Streetscape Master Plan and then through, by extension, the specific plan, there are locations where we could look at possibilities to install new murals or site-specific, like sculptural or artistic elements spread throughout the 600, 700, and 800 blocks of Laurel Street. So this is just representing that. And moving on to Chapter 9, Sustainability and Resiliency. With any streetscape improvement, we have to ensure that it meets C3 requirements, that it's addressing stormwater runoff and low-impact development techniques. And so this is really represented one way through the design of the streetscape improvements. This image here showing the 700 block of Laurel Street and those shapes that are in green are depicting the proposed rain gardens that would serve to collect rainwater and meet those C3 requirements, but also serve in another way to get some of the things that we want to see in our downtown core, which is more landscaping, more street trees for shading. So those rain gardens would include those components. So recognizing opportunities for green infrastructure is elevated and advanced through policy. And then there are also policies that respond to and to our current building code for getting green building standards in place and green energy efficient design, and really looking at active transportation as a sustainability component by having people more do some trips by foot or by bicycle, and looking at those clean energy transportation options. I have 2 more chapters to go, so thank you for your patience. The second to the last is infrastructure and utilities. As we upgrade our city streets, it's important for us to consider all of the upgrades that would need to happen underneath the streets, and that's looking at modern infrastructure, technologies, and sustainable practices, and making sure that we have the necessary type and ability of our infrastructure to meet the growing needs of the downtown. Policies also direct us to partner with other service providers, such as Cal Water, to align those infrastructure upgrades with our downtown streetscape master plan projects. We know that Cal Water is eager to put in improvements to their water line in our downtown, but they're willing to work with us and wait for us, as we don't want to rip up the street twice. So coordination with Cal Water will be important, as well as with other public utility providers. And sort of along those lines, we have policies that, with those infrastructure improvements, making sure that we upgrade all of them, as I mentioned before, to meet our growing demands. With waste management, we have a policy in there that encourages us to think about how we can reduce our waste and to really work with our partner agencies to develop programs and upgrade facilities in and around the downtown. And then finally, a telecommunications policy that directs the city as a future point of work to evaluate the feasibility of offering free public Wi-Fi service within the downtown district. And then last, but certainly not least, is the administration and implementation chapter of the downtown specific plan. Implementation really has to do with improvements to the streetscape, how we would go about making those capital improvements, how we might finance them, and how we might phase them. So the diagram in front of you was really born out of the Streetscape Master Plan, where 13 different segments were identified. And one thing to make really clear is that the precise sequencing, this is a starting point, and this was a recommendation put forward for the city's consideration. But what actually happens, the precise sequencing, will ultimately be decided by the City Council and then based on funding availability. Also in this chapter, there is recognition that during streetscape implementation, there will be disruption. And so through policies and actions, we are recognizing these disruptions, and we want to really make it a very clear commitment that we want to ensure continuous access for the community during different phases of streetscape improvements. And the action item reads here is that the city will proactively inform, communicate, and collaborate with downtown businesses and the broader community throughout construction. And outreach will include sharing schedules, timing, phasing details, providing clear points of contact, and offering support resources to reduce impacts during construction. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, there were concerns about, what happens to businesses, what are we going to do during the course of construction, and this policy and action really aims to address that, so that we have to develop a programmatic means by which to ensure that clear messaging is going out to the community, and we do that in a way that is collaborative. And then finally, with respect to funding, there's not going to be obviously one funding source. The plan recommends a diversified funding strategy. And in addition to that, it lists different funding resources that are spelled out in detail in this chapter. As part of making these improvements, there is policy language that directs us to make sure that we are looking at certain factors such as long-term cost effectiveness and really coordinating across city departments and stakeholders to really ensure timely and efficient implementation of these improvements. Other policies direct us to look at possible public and private partnerships and other models to acquire the funding needed to make cost-effective infrastructure improvements. So with that, I want to thank you, and that concludes my presentation, and we are available for any questions that you may have. And up here on this slide, I just sort of grouped the 6 different suggestions for how to go through the document with any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. This is a a tremendous milestone for the team to have reached, and really thank all of the members of the public and the GTAC and others who have provided input along the way. So we'll take staff's recommendation here to group in the 2 chapter at a time discussion. So would anyone like to begin with questions, clarifying questions on chapters 1 and 2? Indeed.
Could I ask whether this question falls into chapter 1 and 2? It's a question around community feedback and that process that you described around community feedback and listening sessions and all that stuff. Does that fall under here? Or is it in?
Yeah, that would be under chapter 1 and chapter 2. Chapter 2, I believe, describes the civic engagement process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I'll ask my question. Would that be okay?
Of course.
Great. I recognize that there were a bunch of different kind of working groups and listening sessions, et cetera. I'm curious about the level of engagement. There were, I think you mentioned 100 and some odd people that participated in the different working groups themselves. I'm wondering how much the community participated in the form of things like feedback that you got, people that attended the meetings and workshops, et cetera, and design sessions. I want to see how involved the city residents became in the framework that you constructed to take in the feedback, right? Does that make sense? Like what the level of engagement was and how you kind of think about it and quantify it.
Yeah, the level of engagement, well, certainly with the DTAC, that's probably the easiest to answer. There's 18 members. Most of them participated at every meeting. We had meetings where we brought ideas and concepts and diagrams, broke out into different groups, wrote up on, wrote and put Post-its on all of the diagrams and gave us their input. And through that process, many different iterations for the streetscape improvements were evolving. We also had meetings that were more in-depth related to policies, providing homework opportunities where they can look at policies, make comments on those. We provided technical consultants to describe the trade-offs relative to parking, mobility. We brought the DTAC together with the other city commissions, such as the Park and Rec and Culture Commission, the Youth Advisory Council, the Economic Development Advisory Commission, and we had all commissions, I think for maybe the first time in history, I don't know, an all commissions meeting, which was taped, and you can see it on our San Carlos Downtown Plan.com website. So we got a lot of feedback, both verbal, written, with Post-it notes, throughout the process with the DTAC. So going to your original question regarding the level of community feedback, I would say that the way that we would measure that is based upon, there's two things that we considered when we think about community feedback and engagement. Number one is how we're reaching the community. And we utilized every tool that we had at our disposal to reach out to the community, inform them of the workshops. That included using the City of Good Living newsletter, which goes out to every resident and every business owner. So we would kind of time, when the next issue is coming out to be able to announce our upcoming workshop. We started to acquire people who wanted to follow the process, or I shouldn't say people, but where we asked to get their email address. Like, if you want to follow the process, sign in, give us your email. So over the course of time, we developed over an email distribution list of over 1,500 individual email addresses. We walked door to door in the downtown several times, not just once, passing out flyers to businesses and merchants, talking to them about what we're doing. We've gone to farmers markets market. We had flyers at Art and Wine Fair. We are using all of our social media tools, Nextdoor, Instagram, Twitter/X. We're using e-Notify. We're using city council newsletters, newsletters to the adult community center, newsletters to the school district, really picking up everything that we could do, including putting A-frame signs, just like we have outside today in our downtown, to get the community aware of this, and really kind of going to them by kind of latching on to different community events and being at the city booth and people putting out big, colorful images of streetscape improvements, getting people to stop by. So we didn't track how many people that came to the booth, or, we weren't able to track that. But we do know that our outreach efforts really worked, and that's based upon the number of people that we saw coming to our workshops or participating in our surveys. And I think I might have mentioned before that in one of our surveys we had just about 700 or just over 700 responses. I don't have a record of all the surveys that have gone out in the city, but I can tell you that in my career, getting a 700 response is actually really good. Sometimes we don't get that much. I feel very confident, and including looking at the stack of raw data that we have from our community, that we got a lot of good feedback. I would share, though, that not everybody feels exactly the same about the changes that are being made. But for the most part, there was a lot of overwhelming support to close the 700 block. And we made that decision, or the council made it along the way after going back to them, reporting back on what the community said. So there was quite a bit of engagement, but I don't know if I have the data maybe in a way that you're asking for it. But certainly it's all there if we wanted to kind of numerize it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on these chapters?
Yes, I have a question. So, Lisa, first of all, nice job in putting this all together. When I went through this, really, I didn't follow necessarily recommendations per chapter. I came up with what I found are 4 findings and recommendations. If you could indulge me, if I could go through those, I'd like to. I think some of these go through on chapter 3, but the first one is regarding the MUN 40 height and setbacks at Walnut Street Edge. It first became aware of it, some of the emails that we got from residents about the concerns. One question about that, during these outreach programs that you had, were any of those concerns voiced prior to the time we got emails?
Well, if I may, Commissioner Kennedy, I'd like to back up a bit and first of all acknowledge the many comments that we received, and I apologize I didn't mention that before. I should have done it during land use, and there were so many things going on in my head that I forgot. So first of all, apologies for that, and to the residents on Walnut Street. We did, for the record, get several comments, I don't know, at least 8, maybe something like that, comments from the Walnut Street neighbors, noting a typographical error in Chapter 3, whereby the MUN 40 zoning district listed incorrectly a building height of 75 feet. That is absolutely incorrect. That's a typographical error, and the correct height, or the height that is in the code today, is 50 feet. So there's absolutely no change to that. And in addition, so going back to your question about hearing from the residents, through the specific plan process, what we did is we really took the zoning standards that are in place today, we brought them over into the downtown specific plan and made some minor adjustments, as you saw on the screen just a moment ago. But in addition, I would share that the city had just gone through a very extensive process to update the zoning to establish objective design standards for mixed use and multifamily housing. And so those standards were embraced as part of the downtown specific plan process, and we didn't want to deviate from those because they're very good standards. standards. There was a lot of effort that was made to develop those, so those are essentially being transferred as well into the downtown specific plan, so that we have those objective design standards in place within the downtown specific plan boundaries, and then of course elsewhere. So I don't know if comments came up on that particular issue through the objective design standards. They may have, or my colleague is saying no, they didn't. So those, as you know, have been adopted, very recently adopted, and they take effect, I think, in the next 10 days or so, November 14th. So that is sort of the context of which those development standards establish themselves in the downtown specific.
Okay, you addressed one of the concerns was the 75-foot. That was a typographical error, so I think we can put that to rest. Some of the concerns that I noticed were the remains that 4-story, 50-foot building with 20-foot rear and 10-foot side setbacks. I think the concern was that would overwhelm residents on Walnut Street. So I guess the question is, does that current standard meet the objective design standards, or is there something we could do? What I was recommending is, I think the plan is good. However, looking at creating a Walnut Edge overlay type of plan where you would address the issues that, for example, and these are just notional values. For example, limiting to 3 stories or 40 to 45 feet within 50 to 60 feet of the resident's property line, maintaining a 20-foot rear and a 10-foot setback, and then adding privacy and shading mitigation procedures. Now, I'm not saying we have to do that. I'm just saying, is it possible that as part of the recommendation, we could go back and develop a plan to address those issues if they're within the objective design standards and we can meet them, great. If not, but I would like to do that if it's possible.
Well, I can share that if we were to reduce the height or reduce the zoning density, that would be a deviation from what was just adopted. And that would also be a deviation from what's been in our code since prior to even our housing element getting adopted. So I understand the comments that are coming through and the requests being made. I'd like to make it similar to what's on the east side, on East San Carlos Avenue, but the zoning that is in the downtown specific plan is the same as the zoning that's been in place prior to 2023 with the housing element and consistent with what's in place for the objective design standards. Rich is coming closer to me. But there may be some modifications made through ODS for buffers. Was that something that was new, Rucha? Do you landscape buffers? Or you do want to, maybe that might. Yeah, thanks.
Good evening, Commission members. I'm Rucha Dande, Principal Planner and also the Project Manager for the Objective Design Standards Project. So I would like to just back up that very recently we adopted the Objective Design Standards for the mixed-use and multifamily residential development within the mixed-use and multifamily zoning districts. During that process, to bring forward the recommendation to reduce the rear setback within the MUN 40 district. We, based off that recommendation, based off of some test fits that was done, and the test fit analysis basically required, what we did was we selected 3 or 4 sites and we tested these proposed standards as to how they are really working in real life. And those standards informed us that the existing 30 feet setback, the rear setbacks were excessive. And the objective of these standards was also to see where we can tweak or modify existing standard to help make housing more feasible in San Carlos. So one of the recommendations from our very able consultants, the urban design consultants from Van Meter William Pollock, they had suggested and recommended to reduce the setbacks from 30 to 20 within the MUN 40 district because it was found to be super excessive. To give you a comparison, Within our single-family zoning districts, the rear setback is 15 feet. Double of that is for the mixed-use district, which used to be 30 is now proposed, or now is at 20 feet. So that was the balance where we reached at. That was presented to the council. Initially, we had presented 15 feet. However, council was not supportive of that, and then we proposed 20. And just to give you a brief calculation on how many residential units we gain, we did math, and I think within the MUN 40 district, we gained for about 10% of more residential units by just adjusting the rear setbacks. So that is where that was the background on why the setbacks were amended from 30 to 20.
Okay.
And then to mitigate any impacts, there was also a landscaping requirement. Initially, the landscaping requirements were very, how can I put it, very bare minimum, like the landscaping shall be within the 10 feet of a buffer. But however, now we have more robust landscaping requirements with the tree species, at what height the tree should be planted at, what is the foliage, and all of that. So the idea of objective design standards were not only to adjust the standards, but also to make it more lengthy in terms of helping people understand what really is required and what the intent of these standards are. So that's the background on the setbacks.
Well, that's helpful. So if I could summarize then, what you're saying is this plan is consistent with the objective design standards, correct?
For most of the cases, yes, it is. However, because this is a specific plan, it has its own standards and certain, for example, Lisa mentioned that the step-back requirements are a little different than what the objective design standards are for throughout the city. However, most of them are very consistent with the ODS.
And, I mean, what's your overall assessment of the privacy concerns for residents, with the standards you have now? What was your finding or takeaway?
Yeah, I can quickly step back and give you an overview of the outreach process that was conducted for the Objective Design Standards project. So initially, early this year, we had an open house where that was conducted within the Greater East San Carlos neighborhood, just to make sure it is closer to the residential district. We had done a survey and a lot of newsletters and, notices went out, and initially we did receive some input and feedback about privacy concerns if the setback is reduced. However, there was also comments on having more robust landscaping, and that's how we achieved it. We added more landscaping to make sure that the standards that we propose through ORDS go above and beyond what the existing standards are.
Okay, no, thank you. All right, that addressed my first question. I'm sorry. So the second question, Lisa, is regarding Laurel Street 700 block closure in the bank. There was a letter that I saw that we got today. The counsel for the property owner raises an access concern and ADA concerns regarding the 700 block, which currently serves as a drive-through ATM, correct?
Correct, currently.
Yes. Okay, so I guess the question I have is, is it one of the potential issues is, and maybe City Council can address that, but it's really a takings issue. Is it possible we could get a legal memo or some kind of brief on what the city's exposure to that is? Or maybe you've already done it. The city attorney's already done that.
I could just give you some background, Commissioner, about the process that led to the closure of the 700 block. The city in 2023 went through a process under the Pedestrian Mall Law of 1960. And that law required notices to be posted all along the block every certain number of feet, describing what the plan was. And the council held a public hearing as a result of those notices under the Pedestrian Mall Law. And the way the law is structured is it gives any of the property owners along the proposed mall the ability to protest or make a claim that there's an effect on the value of their property. So since we went through that process, there's that, in my opinion, is cut off because there was an opportunity to make a claim, and we didn't receive any claims that were valid. So there is a request in here, and I'm certainly I just got this myself this afternoon, so I am certainly going to reach out to Mr. Hunter, the attorney who wrote the letter, and talk about the history of the project and how we got to where we are now, and talk with them about, I mean, we did recognize that there was that driveway there, but I think the issue, as I see it, is that the property has frontage on the back and side of the property, so it does have access to public streets and to the alley in the back. But we certainly want to work with the owner of the property on reconfiguring that to make it, if possible, feasible for them to have that rear ATM with the drive up. There is another. They do have an ATM on the mall, what will be the mall on the street side, but I think I can see from the letter that they perceive that having the drive-through as important for them. So I'm definitely going to talk with them.
Okay, great, thank you. Issue number 3, if I could.
Is this in chapter 1 or 2?
I'm not sure. So well, the financing. So that
We wait to get to that one until 11.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one would be, I'm not sure what chapter it is. The SAM Trans request, where would that be?
Chapter 3.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, that's something you can incorporate into this, or maybe it already is, but they requested corrections on the routes ECR and 397 and figure 5.4 and construction phase coordination.
There were 2 letters from Sam Trans.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that is the mobility chapter. There were some suggested recommendations. I looked through them. They didn't look problematic
Okay,
to staff.
that's easy to
so
fix.
I think
Okay, great.
Those are well received and would be good
And-
additions.
And we've already talked, I'll address the finances. What is that, chapter 11? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Anand?
I have one question on this chapter. This is regarding the 4-story building, some concerns regarding the fourth story, and it was mentioned about a 2016 commission meeting where there was some talk about the 4-story building. Can you provide some transparency into the thought process behind this and how the 4 stories were determined in this plan?
The 4-story on which street? Was it the
Yeah, so the MUN 40.
UN 40?
Yeah.
I think we would need to look back into the code, but prior to this meeting, we were clarifying, was this a change that was put into place with adoption of the latest housing element, or was it there before? And when we looked prior to 2023, the 4-story was currently, was in the code. So I guess, I don't know exactly when Andrea is going to look. Thanks, Andrea. But as far as the history, like how long has it been there? I can tell you that back in 2009, the city went through a comprehensive update of its general plan, all the elements, and then they followed up shortly thereafter with an update to its zoning ordinance in 2011. So maybe it was in 2011 where maybe some modifications were made, including naming designations for mixed-use districts and so forth. But that has been in place, and I think maybe one of the first projects that, maybe it was 2016, 934 Laurel, might be the project that took advantage, or I should say, utilized the provisions of the zoning ordinance to build a new project at that site. And that's where a condition was made to put in a lot of landscaping, preservation of a cork oak tree, and including a lot of trees in the back. So fast forward to today, I know that through the objective design standards, landscape buffers were something that we wanted to elevate and make sure we're putting very clear, abundantly clear standards for minimum expectations to establish those landscape buffers. So that's when the buffers came into place. But I believe the zoning has been there for a while, since 2012.
Thank you, because as I read it, like there've been two main concerns. One is like the setback reduction from 30 to 20, and then the 3 to 4 stories. So, but these are not specific to this plan. They're more like they're coming from previous decisions or determinations. That's
correct.
Thank you.
Any other on 1 and 2 before I jump in? So for context, can you help us kind of reground us in the RHNA requirements and sort of the amount of growth that we're anticipating to see here in the downtown core, and kind of how, any sort of, I think the downzoning might impact our RHNA numbers and our ability to meet our housing obligations?
Sure. So in the last housing element update cycle, we needed to meet a minimum of 2,735 new units to the year 2031. This specific plan includes an extrapolation of the regional housing needs allocation numbers to the year 2045. So maybe Rohit, you can help me with the build out number for the residential. It might even be in the staff report. In fact, I know I put it in the staff report. I just need to find it. So that would be for the downtown specific plan area, just over 1,500 units to the year 2045. And of course, our regional housing allocation number is citywide. So in the downtown specific plan area, that would be an addition of 1,500 new units.
Thank you very much. And with respect to the plan that's here before us today, this plan is not changing the prior zoning or the height limit for the...
No, the only consideration would be for the property at 1250 San Carlos Avenue, the Samtrans site.
Thank you. And if that were to be something that would be considered a downzoning for those other parcels, and those properties might have comments to that effect?
If we downzone to anything well, first of all, there are certain state laws that would not allow us to downzone, especially sites that are designated for housing, and sites that, and just in general, I would say our basic, we can't lower the density, we can't lower the height when it comes to sites that are available for residential uses. So just overall, so we have some constraints on that, given state laws. For the Samtrans site, we'll hear from them, but if we were to, we couldn't just take one site and change the minimum density for one site. It would be kind of a special consideration and not in parity with what we're requiring for other sites.
Thank you very much. That, I think, answers my questions on 1 and 2. So we can move on to 3 and 4. Do you want to start down there, Commissioner Tapias?
I'll need a second.
You'll need a second.
I organize my questions differently.
Yeah. Are you ready?
I can go.
Thank you.
This is regarding the Samtrans side. I understand that that Samtrans mentioned that whatever the city is proposing would delay development by a decade or more. So has any study been done to that effect, and how have the trade-offs been determined in terms of taking a longer duration for the project versus building the units? Because I understand that there's a housing target that the city needs to meet, but even that target comes with a time milestone. So how is that balancing act being done right now?
Well, the city hasn't done a study, particularly on the Samtrans site. However, the folks at Samtrans have evaluated their site and have met with city staff to share those outcomes. And that is one of the things that we have heard, is that they feel that if we imposed our current standard, the current zone, again, is 75 units minimum, 75 units to the acre minimum, and they want to go under the current code. And then we're looking at something that would require at least 90 if we were to look at getting the highest and, best use and most leverage out of the site, the most units possible, right next to Caltrain, right in our downtown, getting housing units that the city wants to see. So we haven't done a study other than, to recognize what is happening or changing for the site. So this was really, we looked at this as an opportunity for us. In terms of the trade-offs in waiting for a project to come, I don't have an official answer for the city, but I can say that this is a long-range plan, and sometimes things take time to establish themselves in the way that we've always wanted them to be. And there's many examples of that happening here in the city, whether we're waiting for an activated use to be to occupy the space at the ground floor near the train station. Sometimes those spaces sit vacant for a while, and other uses want to go in, but sometimes folks want us to change the rules or regulations, but we maintain those regulations, and today we have really great activated uses right by the train station. And the same can be said for getting a hotel at the landmark site on the corner of Holly and Industrial. Same kind of story there. Certainly, it's always exciting to see things happen sooner than later, but in terms of exactly when a development would take place is sort of in terms of the feasibility and the market conditions. That would be the same for any type of housing developer that comes into our city. So we just adopted our minimum density requirements not that long ago in 2023. So we know the current market conditions that we're in, and we don't want to sort of jump ahead and start changing those right away, and maybe giving them a chance to work the way that they intended to when the market rebounds. So that's our thinking, and our director is here if he would like to add anything. No? He says no. I guess I didn't do too bad.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kennedy? I had a couple in this one, kind of little weedy things. An LU 15, which is on page 65 for those following along. It talks about ensuring that all mixed-use buildings with retail and service commercial uses on the ground floor maintain consistent ground floor design. Is the consistency as defined by the objective design standards? Or, I think buildings should have some, ability to look a little different. So what do we mean by that terminology?
Vice Chair Bundy, I'm sorry, that was LU
15 on
15.
page 65.
Okay.
Just the word consistent. Is this referring to the objective design standards, or kind of, does everyone have to look exactly the same? What do we mean by that?
It's not intended to mean that every ground floor use has to look exactly the same, but there are certain foundational design elements for the ground floor with respect to transparency, the design of storefronts and entrances. It's intended to mean that, but maybe we could make that more clear, not in terms of architectural design or all elements of design, but certain, I guess you can say, the bones of design, more so than the layering on of an expression that might embody a different look and feel. But we don't mandate a particular style or design in the city on any properties.
Thank you for that one. And then the other one is LU 18, where we say establish development standards that improve the visual quality, et cetera. Is this plan doing that, or are additional development standards to be developed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one again?
Yeah, LU 18, again on page 65.
It's sort of, the way sometimes policies are written are you kind of get credit for what you've done, and then it's always to make sure you're striving towards that effort. So development standards that are in this plan are intended to do that, but as let's say we were to make an amendment to a standard in the plan, in the downtown specific plan, there are policies that are always there to guide how we do that. So that's how this is written. It's not to say that we don't have those standards. We do, and it's a policy to always strive towards that.
So future updates could tier off of this policy.
Correct, yeah.
That makes sense. And then another one, I think it speaks to some degree to the U.S. Bank question, the allowable uses. There's banks and financial institutions, but there's also drive-throughs that are identified, and those uses are not allowed in a MUN or MU district. So maybe just thinking
That's
about.
correct. In our current code, drive-throughs are not allowed. This is our priority pedestrian zone, and the downtown core over the years and since the last general plan was adopted has always intended to be that. And I thought it was very interesting to read the actual old vision statement of the the general plan for the downtown. It's very much kind of in line with what we still want today. So if we were to put in allowances for drive-throughs, it really impedes that pedestrian safe flow that we're trying to establish in the downtown core. We recognize there's existing ones today, they're grandfathered in, but we wouldn't want to allow more drive-throughs. So those are correct, they're prohibited.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's all I have on 3 and 4. Are there any other comments or observations? All right, moving into 5 and 6. Who would like to go first?
I have a question around bicycle lanes. So, bicycle lanes,
Okay.
yes. So the plan covered a couple of different types of bicycle lanes in different areas of the plan, meaning different areas of the streets. Sounds like some of the lanes were the kind of sectioned off with the, what do you call those?
The vertical buffers.
Yeah.
Vertical bollards. Vertical bollards. Vertical delineators.
Right, so we'll have that, sounds like we'll have that in like the core area of,
On San Carlos Avenue and El Camino Real, I believe.
right.
Yeah.
And then there's some other ones, and this is kind of relating to a couple of the feedback emails that we got. There are some that will go along, I think, I'm sorry, I forget which street on the south side, which basically takes away some parking, some residential parking along that street. Can you talk about kind of the trade-off that you thought about in terms of creating a safe kind of bicycle transit throughway relative to parking and the residents there? And as a bicyclist, I say thank you, but I do want to consider kind of the different uses of that space and specifically the parking that might get a little trickier for the block or two of residents that are there.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start, and then my consultants can jump up here if I say anything wrong or they would like to add really good relevant points. First of all, I would say that part of our work involved doing a lot of existing conditions analysis. What is the current count, if you will, of all of our parking resources that we have in the downtown area or in the immediate downtown area? What do we have? What's the behavior of those folks using the parking? What's the turnover? And really comparing that to the future growth that's anticipated in this plan. And what does that mean for parking? And so that helped us understand, do we have a parking deficit? Are we really, when losing spaces is going to be really a hard swallow in terms of a trade-off to get protected bicycle lanes, infrastructure in place so everyone can feel more safe bicycling in and around our downtown. And what we found is that even, and this is maybe where I'll need Brian, maybe I should just have you come up here, that we found that even with growth that there would be adequate parking to meet the future growth demands so that we could really be able to make that trade-off. But I think the key thing is how we manage that. Maybe you want to talk about that, Brian. I think this is your expertise, so
Sure.
you can do better.
Happy to chime in here. Thank you, Lisa. I think you're doing a fine job anyways, but I'll lend my 2 cents here. So yes, I mean, we did do comprehensive inventory and occupancy counts of the whole downtown, doing turnover as well, to really get a good sense of how parking is utilized across different parts of the downtown, whether it be on-street, off-street, public or private. And we're obviously very cognizant of the fact that parking demand patterns change over time and by location. Generally speaking, for the downtown, they're actually, if you look at the downtown as a whole, I mean, you'll find that there are high points of demand and low points of demand in that, but that there is a sufficient amount or number of vacant spaces, even at peak hour, to be able to accommodate some sort of loss. And we also looked ahead to the future, looking at future build out of the downtown and whether or not, and obviously estimating with a little bit of a crystal ball here, conservatively how much parking new developments are going to produce given the recent laws. And yes, I mean, over time, the on-street supply can accommodate it. Obviously, it would get a lot more constrained, which is why we do have several parking management strategies built into the plan. But this went into our thinking of, in terms of the trade-offs between parking and bike lanes, for example, is that we felt that there was sufficient vacancy, even at the peak hours, to be able to accommodate this sort of facility. Now, again, that's a little bit of a judgment call. Obviously, we'd welcome your feedback on that, but looking at the numbers, we felt the number of spaces lost would be limited for this.
Thank you. I'm going to pass.
Commissioner Anand?
I have 2 questions. One, just tailing off of the previous discussion in terms of the parking spillover to adjacent residential areas. So I understand that there's been an evaluation, as you said, Brian, that there's even during peak hours, there is some amount of parking that remains. But again, like you rightfully said, there are moving parts and things change over time. So in case it's discovered that there is a parking spillover in other residential neighborhoods, and this is a 20-year plan, so let's say 5 years from now, what provision is there in the plan to kind of change course or to revise or to hear from the public? Like what happens then?
So one of the things that we are frankly fully expecting to happen right now as growth occurs is that you do have in the downtown in several different areas, and we heard this from different downtown residents too, is that there's essentially free and unrestricted parking, right, in these residential areas. It's kind of a gimme for people to spill over into those areas to be able to use. One of the things that we're recommending is that a residential parking permit district be introduced regardless of where you are in the city, including in the downtown. Right now, only Greater East San Carlos has access to an RPP district. And one of our, I think, midterm strategies that we have built in there is that other districts like in the downtown be eligible for a similar program to be able to limit spillover into their neighborhoods. So that's the kind of the primary mechanism that we see as being able to limit that spillover that we see very likely happening in the future if you were to, I would say, maintain your current on-street management.
And in addition, as we go through with different construction phases, there will be certain parking spots that will be temporarily blocked by the construction vehicles. And then what happens then? Like how is that being planned? Let's say 50 parking spots are like just taken, that block is closed for construction for a few months, then what happens at that time?
Well, obviously I can't speak to any specific development right now, but typically if you were going to, let's say, deactivate a certain number of parking spaces for a limited amount of time for construction, you'd want to be able to determine, for example, how many cars are currently parking there at that time. What key groups really absolutely require access? I'm thinking of disabled parking in particular. You know, obviously one of the things that we're recommending as part of this plan is to significantly increase the number of disabled or accessible on-street spaces throughout the downtown. But that would be something that you would need to take into account. So as soon as if it was a significant construction plan where you're thinking about deactivating, like you said, 50, 70 spaces, something along those lines, you'd want to be able to take a look at you could probably do a relatively quick analysis of trying to figure out where that spillover is going to occur. If you have a significant number of employees, for example, who are using those spaces, are there places where you can reallocate those people and really kind of and shift that demand? So for example, one of the strategies that we have in our plan currently is to better utilize the second floor of the Wheeler garage, which is mostly empty. That could work well in some construction scenarios, it might not work well as in others. So that's why I hate to be vague, but it's a little bit of a case-by-case scenario.
Yes, thank you. So if it will be amazing if we can make a note somewhere that while the construction takes place, we also work proactively to avoid spillovers in the neighborhood, even during the construction phases. And my second question would be related to the Samtrans bus operations. I understand there's going to be some temporary changes for the bus stops or some rerouting that happens. So how is that being factored into, let's say, the budgeting or even coordination with things such as Public Works? Is there a plan for that?
For improvements to the bus stops?
For any changes to the bus stops, even like during the construction or after? I saw something to the effect of change in some bus route.
I don't think I have all of the answers to that, but that would need to be coordinated with Public Works, with Samtrans during any kind of future improvements that could impact whether it's a bicycle lane or parking nearby or even the traffic, like how that is typically done. I know that's something that Public Works keeps an eye on in any kind of improvement or construction activity, what happens with the traffic. So that might need to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis versus an absolute solution somehow embedded in the plan. Hanya, I don't know if you might have a better answer than that or maybe more complete. She's coming.
Good evening, Commissioners. Hanya Hushmandi, Senior Traffic Engineer. As far as the Samtrans bus stop, if the duration of construction is long and we're blocking that bus stop ahead of time, we would coordinate with Samtrans and offer some alternative locations and go work with them on the route and where would be the most appropriate relocation, temporary relocation. So it would all get coordinated with Samtrans ahead of time.
This is more of a curiosity question. So for the residents who were dependent on bus or are students, like the ball is in which organization's court to tell them that this is going to happen?
Both. So once we figure out where it's going to go, we're going to do the publicizing of where it's going to go from what time, what month and what date to what month and what date, and when it's going to go back to where it was.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Kennedy, any questions? I think I have a couple. One is with respect, well, just to the experience that people who use wheelchairs and other sort of people who have maybe mobility challenges, how this plan will benefit them, sort of like with the use of the alleys and the drop-offs. Can we speak some to the user experience of people who have those needs?
Well, one of the things that the plan calls out and will need to be done with every new street design is to be consistent with PROAG.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that, Brian?
Sure, but I don't want to.
No, you go. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I had the acronym right, but you can.
No. Go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. PROAG is an acronym that stands for, well, its job is to make sure that we have the minimum amount of accessible parking spaces on a block-by-block basis. So this is a federal law that requires that when cities upgrade their streets or put in new streets, you're designating a specific number. So we've already done an analysis. That's one thing that Brian's analysis is very thorough on, is identifying the needs or the deficit, if you will. So we know what that number is. So that's one way that the plan does that. The plan is also looking at pointing towards potential for pickup and drop-off areas, especially where near the 700 block where that's closed, so that one can safely drop off someone that maybe have some mobility challenges. We've had questions all the way down to the details on the pavement and how we make sure that it's a pavement that's adequate, for to address no skateboarders and that. kind of accomplishing two things. So all of these are being considered, and I would say that, from a design aspect, that's being considered in the construction drawings for the streetscape improvements, for parking under the federal law that I mentioned, and also for pickup and drop off. Another thing about that is really making sure that we have very high visible crosswalks so that anyone that is using them, that pedestrian visibility is very important. In fact, there's another law called the daylighting law that requires that parking be set away from intersections to make the intersection more visible. So that's going to be safe for all users.
Thank you very much. My other one is related to the shared parking, and just how is the development community perceiving this? Is this sort of something we have to do because of state law? How is this working in other places?
All right, so the shared parking, there's different aspects to it. So I'll speak to kind of the two predominant ones that we discuss in our work here. One is really the facilitation of private lot owners who want to share parking, right? So there's no forced mechanism on it. It's more just a facilitation for identifying private lots that could potentially share parking. If they would like to share parking with each other, great. If not, that's okay, right? It's more just to be able to facilitate those opportunities where they exist. The other piece of it has to do with AB 2097 and the right that the city has under that law to be able to require new development. Any new parking that's provided for new development, the city can require that parking be in part or in whole publicly accessible. And that can be the same for residential or it could be for non-residential. So as part of the work that we did talk with several residential and non-residential developers and lenders, discussing with them about how they would feel about sharing parking. And, not surprisingly, residential developers and lenders were very much opposed to it. Totally understandable. It makes it very difficult to lease, security challenges, and so forth. Talking with non-residential developers, the feeling was that there's a lot more flexibility when it comes to sharing, but it would have to be limited in some way, right? So it's not simply just open 24/7, but there would have to be some parameters around it. We discussed this actually quite a bit at City Council some months ago as well. City Council seemed to express their comfort level with saying requiring shared parking or publicly accessible parking for only non-residential uses during non-business hours. So that essentially what you're saying is that only while your lot should be mostly empty would this take effect. And so that seems to be a reasonable approach that has gotten support from most of the folks that we've spoken to so far.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more questions on 5 and 6. Does anyone else? 7 and 8. Who would like to go first?
I can go. I have a question on number 7. This is regarding equitable use, and it's mentioned in the plan several times, and rightfully so, about ensuring that the new space is being used equitably. So can you elaborate on what that means and any parameters to measure the success of that kind of a vision?
And Commissioner Anand, again, I'm sorry if you can direct me to the policy or page.
This would be page 151.
Okay.
I have PR 23. PR 23, page 151.
Yeah, so this one reads, design and program public spaces for inclusivity, incorporating features and offering activities and events that engage and accommodate all users. So again, this is a broad policy, and that is directing the city that when we design these public spaces, and then later when we programming them, that we're thinking about, flexibility so that that space can really accommodate a number of different functions and through its design. And then as program, thinking about certain programs and events that really are accessible to all users. And so I think your question had to can you ask it one more time? Thank you.
Yes, so there are two aspects to it. I was able to go back to chapter 2 as well and find bits of this under equity and resiliency. So I gather that the vision is for the new spaces as well as design and programming to be equitable. So what is equitable, and how will it be measured that they are that there is equitable access to these spaces?
We don't have a means in the plan by which to measure that. That's not to say that the city, this is maybe something where I would need to reach out to my colleagues in Park and Rec, but they're always, looking at different programs, and they're always considering the users, the needs of the users, and really making sure that the programs and offerings are really accessible to all members of the community. They may have some sort of framework or something that establishes how they go about the selection process, or not even a selection, but the ideation process, if you will. So what we want to make sure, I think the idea behind this policy is to really kind of elevate this notion of making sure that the design can accommodate a number of different functions. Like, for example, the 600 Plaza, making sure that we're designing it as a space that can function as a beer garden, which may be obviously for those that want to drink beer, but at the same time, on another day, could function as a temporary ice skating rink, or a place where there's a performance. That could be more of a musical performance, or maybe it can be an exhibit. So that's the idea behind this policy, is just really making sure that as we're designing these plazas and public spaces, that they're really multifunctional. And in terms of measuring equity and inclusivity, I guess that may be something, a different type of tool that the city uses, maybe outside and independent of the downtown specific plan. But I'm not aware of maybe like a framework that the city may have. I would have to reach out to our Parks and Rec staff to see if they currently utilize something like that.
Because it's a part of the plan, I would recommend that there is some partnership with Parks and Rec and some amount of measurement. Like these ideas are great to have and they sound very nice, but if we can actually continue to monitor them, maybe surveys or even qualitative data, more outreach, I think that will really fulfill the purpose of this being in the plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kennedy? No. I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you have any more? Take your time. Thank you. Pass. Your pass. All right. I have a couple little weedy ones again. On Chapter 7, the public realm, there is PR 28, which I think it's 151, regarding prohibition of generators, which I am fully in support of. They're loud and polluting, and I have asthma. But will we need to phase in that requirement since we won't have the smart poles right away? Does the plan interpretation read that once it's adopted, generators go poof and the tamale vendor can't use their generator, or is there some phasing element to that?
Well, there would be a phasing element, and this is a policy, not a particular standard. So this is something that we're aiming toward, but in application currently in today, what's out on the street today versus what may be allowed at an event in our near future, those are happening sort of through standards that are evaluated by Public Works and Fire and so forth. But I think what this plan is attempting to do is move in a direction where we don't have gas-powered generators in the downtown. And we may want to clarify this policy a little bit because it shall be prohibited. But certainly this is going to be much more feasible when we actually make our streetscape improvements, when we have, electrical outlets available, for those, you don't need to use a generator. So that's the goal. But as it reads today, it says it shall be prohibited. So one would say, okay, well, you can't do it. So I think that's the idea behind the policy, is with the streetscape improvements, we would be able to enforce something like that because we have the infrastructure in place. So that would be a good clarification.
Thank you very much. think that's all the clarifying questions I have on those chapters. 9 and 10. Who would like to go first? Mr. Tapias.
I'd be happy to. I got really excited about this idea of these rain gardens along Laurel, and for the various kind of both aesthetic as well as practical functions that they play. And then I also started thinking about how, as I understand it, they're holes, basically, right? They're under, they have some number of feet under the street level that they go, and trees and plants are grown there. I started wondering about kind of the change in kind of groundwater levels and water surges, et cetera, around storms and floods, and as we think about how water and kind of water surges and recedes, surges and kind of receding of water will change over the coming couple of decades through this plan, or through the lifetime of this plan. How do we think about flooding around where these gardens are relative to the street? And I'm thinking back to a couple of years when we had the big flooding issues along El Camino and Laurel, parts of Laurel. How do these structures, these gardens, mitigate against being kind of the for lack of a better term, like the groundwater spouts for water surges?
I'm probably not going to be able to answer your question because I am not an
well-formed question
engineer.
either,
No, you asked a really great question. But the idea is to insert these in to the streetscape as a means to be able to capture, water flow. And with each streetscape improvement, you're going to have drainage in place. So it's not just the rain gardens, but it's drainage throughout the segment of the street to be able to capture that. I think that is something that I would have to get back to you on, unless Rohit, you may have something to share through yours and Jim's conversations about the rain gardens. Would you like to come up? Thanks.
Hello, everyone. The rain gardens are worked out in terms of the sizes and depth, depending of the water we would need to percolate under, as well as it's a part of the stormwater system as well. The implementation phase of this project, our landscape team is working on, and they're working in terms of the sizes and dimensions, factoring how much water needs to be filter and how much water it can accommodate for further uses for landscaping or other purposes. And this system of rain gardens will further feed into the larger stormwater system. So it has been worked out in terms of the sizes of the future stormwater pipes, etc. The standards provided in the specific plan, they do factor in the rainfall and the volume of water that will be collected.
Got it. And unless I'm misunderstanding, I think what your description was kind of water flowing in, and I was concerned about water coming out. But we can I'm happy to follow up or just have an explanation offline. That's fine.
No questions. How about you? Well, this is my favorite part, so sorry. So definitely the stormwater is a big interest to me as well, and the curbless conversion is something that I'm curious about, and how this plan with the curbless. So I think we've talked to some degree about the rain gardens, which I believe will detain water. They'll kind of shave peak flows, and then those flows will either percolate into the ground or they'll flow into the stormwater system, right? So that would help dampen runoff. But with respect to phasing, as we kind of convert a block to curbless, and then we have these blocks that are still curb and gutter, what kind of thinking has gone into that, or will that sort of be worked out in the implementation plan on the utilities side?
I think it's going to be the latter. It's going to need to be worked out with the design engineering of that particular street. And as you continue with one segment to the next, the existing conditions and the conditions of the infrastructure and facilities would need to be taken into consideration. So my expectation is that would be fully worked out through design engineering of each streetscape improvement.
That makes sense to me. Complicated stuff. And then jumping to chapter 10, with regard to the upgrade of the subsurface utilities, we talk about the need to coordinate with various providers. Is there like an overall planning instrument or like a utility master plan, or what's the document or process that helps bring all those complicated things together and align with the phasing?
I believe engineering has a, Tanya, is that something that you know that? No, not specifically. Our engineering staff isn't here today, but there are a number of different facility plans, from sewer to different types of utilities. Andrea's nodding yes. Maybe you can help me out if you know any of those specifically. And they would be the best to determine, what type of approach they have. But it's not as if it's, the city definitely has a framework for approaching those particular topics. Sorry, I can't offer you more detail than that.
Yeah, through the chair, I don't have any more specifics other than that, other than our engineering department does quite a few projects where they're constantly coordinating with all the utilities and have their specific contacts there, and would be, electrical, water, sewer, which we work with ourselves, but all of those at the same time, and scheduling and coordinating all of that. So I don't know the specifics, but I know it's done quite frequently on quite a variety of projects.
That makes sense. Thanks very much. And then the last one is with respect to the IU8, which speaks to recycled water. The policy speaks to individual projects, but then the action talks about the city studying the feasibility of connecting to the Redwood City recycled water system. So just hoping to get more insight into sort of why that action was tiered under the individual development projects, and I can dig up the page if that would help.
This is page 198. I think I heard you say IU8?
Yeah, IU8.
Vice Chair.
Yeah.
Which is individual project developments are encouraged to utilize on-site alternative water sources regardless of whether recycled water infrastructure is extended into the downtown in the future. So this is a policy that we're, obviously striving for in order to, use water more efficiently. I know that in the east side area of our city, one of our new internal policies is to ensure that the buildings are purple pipe ready. We don't have recycled water in our city today, but it's something that we know it's been brought up at commission meetings, at council meetings. It's something that we're striving for. And I think our engineering division would be able to answer that type of question more thoroughly, but we did want to elevate it and include it in the downtown specific plan as something to aim for.
And then the evaluation of connecting would be a supportive policy so that the water's there once the pipes are in place. Okay, that makes sense to me. That's all I had as far as questions. Any more on 9 and 10? Yes, of course.
Can I make one more comment? On IU9, page 198, under telecommunications, it's more of a comment and a request. Telecom tech changes, as we know, very quickly, right? So today, we have large-scale rollout of 5G networks around the country for both Wi-Fi and mobile coverage. If this plan is a 20-year plan, my guess is that there's going to be a number of generations beyond what is being evaluated today. So I guess my ask is somehow either inserting language or ensuring that we have continued kind of review and flexibility of what the current feasible tech is, right? Because it would be sad for us to implement, say, great high-speed Wi-Fi today, and in 7 years, that's no one uses it because it's obsolete or the next thing is the standard. So I would really encourage us to think about using future-proofing language to be able to account for that, what inevitably will change.
Thank you.
That's all. Thanks.
Right, on to 11. Yes, Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, I do. That last question kind of raises an overall question I'd like to ask in terms of the plan. What does the plan legally commit the city to do, if anything?
I would say, well, I'll defer to our city attorney, but I might take a stab at it. And then correct me if I'm wrong. There's no obligation to do anything with one exception, and that is when development comes in and the standards that are in this plan, a developer has to follow. These are the legal rules for new construction, you know, the heights, the setbacks, all of those things, again, which didn't change much, but that compels a private developer to do those sorts of things. As far as an infrastructure improvement or a capital improvement project with the street, again, this is dependent upon future funding, so it's not compelling or obligating the city to go down a path and require that certain funding be spent to improve the streets within a certain time or anything like that. I think I'll stop there and maybe pass the mic to our city attorney to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is a specific plan, and it is intended to be a long-term document, but circumstances change, and if circumstances change, the future Planning Commission and Council could revisit the plan, for Wi-Fi, satellite, whatever it's going to be. I was thinking satellite technology when you were saying that. But if a project were started in a relatively near future, I'd imagine that this plan would address that, and most of the projects would follow the plan pretty closely because the facts wouldn't have changed. But I've been around long enough to know that these plans do change, and the community desires might change. So further out at the end of the plan, I bet you some changes could happen to it, but the short answer is we're not legally obligated as a city to precisely follow the plan, because the council and the Planning Commission and the council can always change it if they so desire.
Right, no, that's helpful, thank you. But I guess from a practical standpoint, though, when I read Chapter 11, it projects the cost at $125 million for the project, if I'm correct. Is that correct, Lisa?
There is an initial cost estimate, and these cost estimates are exactly that. They're estimates. They can change, obviously, over time, and the true cost won't be known until we get bids back once we release or council directs us to advertise to bid. But that is correct. These are the current cost estimates that have been established for to implement the downtown streetscape plan.
So here's my concern. Now, we're not legally obligating the city to do this, but from a practical standpoint, we're putting a lot of time, resources, and efforts into a plan that's going to build a project of $125 million or something like that. And I guess the analogy I would use, like, let's say I wanted to build a $125 million house. I don't want to, but let's say I did. And here's all the great things I wanted to do in it. My question would be, am I ever going to get the funding to do this? Can I actually build this house? So I guess I would ask you, without having and I know it's not required, you have to get the funding approved, but are you confident that the city can come up with $125 million or some semblance thereof, close to that number, to even make this project feasible? And if so, how do you know that? I mean, I don't know because I haven't been in this city that long, but how do you know you're going to get to $125 million to complete the project?
I'm going to ask Al to join me and answer your question.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So your question really, I think, applies to another document and not the specific plan. And maybe that was your intent, just kind of a holistic question about how is the city going to move forward with their plans for improvement, the infrastructure improvement. And the plan that I'm speaking of is the Streetscape Master Plan. And that was previously adopted by the City Council. And that had different phases of construction for the roadways and the sidewalks and utilities and things like that, trees. So that's a separate project than this. This is a policy document. I just wanted to make that clear, that distinction between these two documents clear for everybody. So in terms of the funding, no, the city doesn't know where it's going to get all the funding over the next 20 years to complete the Streetscape Master Plan. What cities do is they adopt these plans, with, it's an aspiration, right? It's an aspirational plan to improve the, within the boundaries that we're looking at tonight. Cities fund these infrastructure projects and through numerous funding sources. So typically there's not any one funding source for a project this large over this long of a period of time. And so the funding can come from different resources, can come from the general fund of the city. It can come from fees that the city takes from development projects. It can come from bond measures or revenue measures that cities begin. And so it's likely that the funding for these phases, and there's, I think, 10 different phases in this plan, in the Streetscape Master Plan over the next 20 years, again, it'll come from many different sources. We do know that the council's interested in starting in the 700 block of San Carlos, and that they're looking very seriously at how to get that project started right away. And I think what we've been hearing from the community, and certainly what we've been hearing as a result of those community comments from our city council, is they want to get started on that project right away. And so it looks like those sources of funding will come from near-term funding sources, could come from sources within our current budget, and perhaps a future revenue measure that the city is considering. Hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Okay. So again, I guess I'll ask the question. You're confident that we can eventually fund this aspirational plan? I mean, based on your experience and the way we operate in the city of San Carlos?
I think that, if you really want to do something, right, I think there's, you shouldn't underestimate the power of a vision. And I've seen that in a number of different cities that I've worked in. And so I think that, if the city wants to do it and the community supports it over a long period of time, we've been very, very creative in terms of the investments that we've made in our community and parks and recreation. Our library was funded partially by the community as well. So we've seen it in our own town. So can I tell you for sure that over 20 years that all these phases will be developed? I can't say, but I can say that at least the first step of it is moving very rapidly, and that there's a will and a determination to get that one off the ground. But I do think that over the next 10 years that there's a possibility that we'll get some of the more than a couple of different phases off the ground and get them completed. But again, who knows what the future holds. Now, I can tell you one last thing in terms of the funding. Over the last 5 5 or 6 years, we've negotiated community benefits from the larger development projects on the east side. And the community benefits that we've negotiated over the last few years total about $73 million. And while there are perhaps some earmarks for some of that funding already, some of it remains to be determined by our city council, and a good portion of that, tens of millions of dollars of that could be put toward infrastructure projects within the city, including the downtown. And so that, when we negotiated those projects, I think that was part of the thinking, is that we would look to those developments who want to come into our community to contribute back to our community. It benefits those developers, those property owners, and the employees of those businesses as well.
Okay, no, that's helpful context. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One last question on that. I mean, so you said there were 11 phases, is that correct?
Is it 10? Oh, there's 13.
13?
Okay, 13.
So these are discrete phases, and I'm thinking, I use analogy, and I think I've already talked to Lisa about this, but a bridge to nowhere. I mean, we can separate these phases and fund them individually, and you still have something valuable. I didn't see anything that was inextricably tied together in terms of the phases, where if you didn't complete the phase, it would make the other phases null and void. These are discrete phases. They can be implemented separately and when you get the funding. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And I think that they were, in terms of the numerical sequence of those phases, there's a reasoning behind that.
Okay.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because they're interconnected. So phase 1 is the heart of our downtown on the 700 block. The next phase, I think, was the 600 block, and then San Carlos Avenue. So it kind of marches down to areas where we have the most activity, the most opportunity to make a difference in our retail makeup, in our businesses, and the vibrancy of our historic core of our downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Anand.
I have a couple questions. So the first one would be the estimated cost of $125 million. Does it, and this is a 20-year projection, so does it take into account the inflation?
The dollar amount here, I believe, is current costs, but we have been working, behind the scenes, looking at overall, we are really taking our financial strategy very serious, and we do have cost escalators built in throughout the life of the plan. So those numbers are being evaluated and continually adjusted.
And then the second question would be, I understand that the way the phases are numbered is in terms of, as Al just mentioned, they're interconnected and they're in the high priority areas. What happens if after phase 1 there is some earmarked special funding that we get which can only be used in, for example, phase 7? Then what's the plan of action? What happens then?
Well, we would get direction from our city council. Is this something that we should pursue? There are a lot of grants out there and available that would take it to design engineering, but not construction. But once you have design engineering in place, you could be, more competitive for a grant that's for shovel-ready projects, which construction drawings would allow us to be shovel-ready. There may be also other types of funding available that's tied more to transit or connectivity. So, for example, San Carlos Avenue being our gateway and directly connected to the Caltrain station, we may be competitive for funding for grants. And one of the action items in this particular chapter is to aggressively pursue grants, and there are a number of different grant opportunities available. So it could be that if there's funding available, let's say for San Carlos Avenue, we would work with the council and we would determine, is this something that we want to pursue? We're able to get the funding and help save the city some costs, so at least get engineering drawings done for that. That may put us in a quicker position to be able to actually construct it or get other types of funding in place to construct it. So this is, like Al said, this is a starting place, the phases, and this again is on page 207 of the plan. And they were designed in a way to be the least disruptive, and then also making sure that certain improvements would be in place before the closure, let's say, of the 600 block, which is phase 3. So actually phase 2 would actually be improving the alley behind the 600 block so that you have, those improvements made, good accessibility, good visibility to the backsides of those businesses that, may help them, be more accessible as by the time they go into construction in phase 3, as an example.
Thank you.
No questions? Thank you so much for this. I have a friend when I worked in planning, and he said, because people will get frustrated when things are changing, he said, it's planning, things change. So I think that'll be important as this moves forward. I had one kind of question about infrastructure finance districts, community finance districts, and climate resilience districts. Are those kind of the same as a special assessment district, or would those be additional funding mechanisms that could be explored? I know San Francisco did one for the Mission Bay development and Treasure Island. Is that something you guys have considered, or does it kind of fall under one of these other buckets already?
I wonder if this is something that David Shiver could help answer, or if Akanksha knows. We have a couple folks on the line. I'm not familiar with the ins and out of these special districts. I don't know if you are, but David, if you're there, is that something you might be able to help us out with?
Can you hear me? I am here.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. There are a lot of different financing tools and district options that you have. What constrains it is the ability of the property owner or the business to actually what they can pay. So you'd want to figure out what district is going to match up best with the nature of the improvements you're hoping to finance out of it. But a lot of other cities, do set up these districts as one part. It's not necessarily the whole financing, but as one part of the financing package, for either a particular phase or a set of phases.
Thank you. I don't think I have any more questions on 11. Do you, Mr.?
And can I just ask one clarification? When we figure out the constellation of funding and all that stuff, who actually manages the process of finding and applying and managing the funding? Is it your team, or is it another team within the city?
Yeah,
How does that
it's
work?
both planning and it's engineering. Lately, it's coming from our senior traffic engineer, Hanya Hushmandi. She is very much in tune with all of the funding coming in through, different measures that have been passed over the years, where now the Transportation Authority or different agencies have funding available that will allow us to do planning work, that will allow us to do design engineering drawings, for example. So, in fact, we're in the process of applying for at least 3 different grants right now that are involved. Things like transportation management or improving streetscapes and those sorts of things. So yes, it's from staff. Oftentimes there could be matching fund requirements. There's obviously requirements that the city passes a resolution saying, yes, we accept these funds. This is something we want to pursue. So our job is to say, hey, there's this funding available. We could be a very good candidate. Is this something that we should go after? And we often do. We meet with the different teams and we talk about our projects, and the agencies offering the funding will let us know if we have a good project that we should apply for. So this is something that we do in-house, and we're going to need more help with that. So I can share that we have an on-call consultant that is working with the city to be able to develop our applications and submit them in a timely fashion, and some of them can be very complex. So we definitely meet as teams to be able to provide the necessary information and materials to apply for those grants.
Thank you. Could I follow up on that question too? This is a good question. Is it possible that that you could prepare kind of like a funding or phase appendix to the plan that just show how you're doing, how you're getting grant funding or other sources of funding, and maybe updated annually with the CIP. Would that be unreasonable? I don't know if maybe that's a little overkill for a city, but just so we know, like on a yearly basis, like, okay, here's the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Here's the identified sources of funding, and maybe do it on a semi-annual, annual basis. Is that
It's not
unreasonable?
I don't think it's unreasonable at all, and I think it's probably something we're going to end up doing anyway.
Okay.
But we're just at the very initial phases of this, and I know the city's evaluating potential funding mechanisms at this time. But I think it makes sense, to have some sort of comprehensive layout or overview. Here's what we have going on over here for this particular segment, the kind of funding opportunities that are coming in, what we're looking at ahead, and maybe that's something that the grant team puts together as we receive our letters of awards, crossing fingers, we have these funds coming in, here's what they're funding, and we can definitely communicate that. I think that would be something very exciting to share, is our success in getting funding for the city.
It's something you could share with the commission here on like a semi-annual, annual basis.
Sure, I would think so.
Okay, great, thank you.
I imagine many of these projects will be coming before us, so we'll be in the loop on things. All right, the long-awaited public comment. I'm going to not allow us to take a break. If you need to step out, you may, but in the interest of the public's time, we'll move into public comment. If you would like to make a public comment for this item, please fill out a request to speak form located at the back of chambers and submit it to staff, or you may raise your hand when the chair calls you. We'll still ask you to fill out a slip. If you're on the Zoom meeting, you can connect via that link, or you can call 1-669-900-9128 and enter the meeting ID 886-3546-7439. You virtually raise your hand by clicking on reactions and then raise the hand icon. If you are joining by phone, you will press *9 and then *6 to unmute when called upon. And we have a 2-minute limit on comments. I'm going to go in the order that the slips were provided. So Chris Hunter, if you may, we'd like to take your comment.
Thank you. My name is Chris Hunter, and I'm with the law firm of HSW LLP. And I represent the owners of the property that at 799 Laurel Street. And they have owned it for a long time, and the tenant is U.S. Bank, who, as you discussed earlier, utilizes the drive-through ATM, which is a valuable amenity. And the Laurel Street closure definitely impacts them and impacts the decisions of the bank whether or not to continue exercising its options to remain on the premises. And so I'm really here for 2 reasons tonight. The first is just to reiterate our concerns. I wanted to make sure you got the letter, and you did, and I have extra copies if anyone needs them. But what we really want to do is to continue meeting with the city. My clients have had some discussions with the staff to talk about ways in which they can try to figure this out. And so what I would like for tonight is, obviously we have to preserve all of our rights, but I'd really like to just continue the conversation and continue the discussion of what can be done for this property to enable it to not be adversely affected by the closure of Laurel Street.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
The next slip I have is for Charla Gomez from Samtrans. Thank you.
Good evening, Vice Chair Bundy, members of the Commission. My name is Charla Gomez. I represent Samtrans. I'm a TOD manager, special projects. I apologize, I'm a little bit cold tonight. Sorry about that. So very briefly, I want to hit I got this only 2 minutes, so I'm going to try to hit 5 points. Here with me is Darren Smith with EPS as our economic development consultant. In line, we have our land use attorney in case that you have some questions about what we think is our legal basis for a request. So first of all, we recognize that the TOD efforts, the downtown division. We are very excited, and our site is being a key opportunity site in the downtown specific plan. We want to basically fulfill the vision from the city. And we understand this, our only site is going to be rezoned in the entire specific plan. So we thought, okay, we're excited. We're trying to support what the city is trying to do, which is high density. So we were excited for the 120 dwelling units per acre, which is the ceiling of the new zoning district. And we thought that it was possible to request a minimum density of 60. And that is basically our central request, and ideally, we keep that. The reason is that we want flexibility. We want to make sure that we can hit the targets somewhere in between. It's not that we want to do exclusively 60. We want just to be able to do something in between, but not start too high, because if that happens, we are concerned about our ability to deliver projects sooner than later. So it's this notion of trade-offs that we notice that the targets of the RHNA goals of the housing element, and we see there are 2,700 units that the city needs to do. We notice there are very few units that we see there are on the pipeline. So we're thinking, okay, maybe we can just accelerate that. And if we were allowed to have this 60 units per acre, we're thinking we can issue an RFP for development in the next year or so. So we're trying to really anticipate the market before it happens. That's basically what we think about it. But if that would not be a reason, because we're seeing that there's a minimum density of 90, because that is coming from the housing element. If that would be the case, we would like to request to leave us the same zoning district that we have, which is the MUD 100. And the minimum density in that existing zoning would be 75 dwelling units per acre. So in that sense, we would help the city, meet the RHNA obligation goals, but we recognize that probably 60 is not feasible for all the reasons of the housing element, et cetera. And then we request that you guys allow us to have that zoning district, and then we can request a state density bonus, which is the option that Lisa, our planning manager, has mentioned to you. If we were allowed to do that, then we can go to 120. So it's kind of like do it the other way around. Leave us the same zoning district. We compromise. We start at 75, and then we request a state density bonus, and we hit the 120. So because we think that, and to be clear, sometimes we do want to do as much as possible, is that if the lower bar is so high, we think that it's going to be very difficult for us, and we have Darren here to speak about construction costs, et cetera, but the horizon of development will be very long.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
You.
Thank you so much. Darren, did you want to provide an additional comment on behalf of Samtrans? And if you could keep it to the 2 minutes. Thank you.
I was planning for 3, but I'll do my best. Good evening. My name is Darren Smith with the Economic and Planning Systems, EPS. We've done a lot of work for the city over the years, but tonight I'm here on behalf of Samtrans. We have looked at their property at 1250 San Carlos, and just wanted to set a little context. In San Mateo County and throughout the Bay Area, the number of residential permits issued in 2024 were the lowest since the Great Recession in 2009. Not because of a lack of demand, but because projects were infeasible. Within this challenging market context, we have concerns that the proposal to zone Samtrans headquarters property to have a minimum of 90 units per acre will present a feasibility challenge that delays its redevelopment. We all can agree that the downtown transit-served context lends itself to density and mixed use. However, many projects built at 90 dwelling units or above per acre are delivered in 5 or more stories. The image shown earlier was, I believe, a 7-story building. which requires type 3 or even type 1 construction, which tends to be a good bit higher cost on a per square foot basis than the type 5 construction that can be accommodated in 4 stories or so. And that difference in cost doesn't necessarily translate to higher rents. It just means it costs more to get the same value out of your units. So we are concerned that that presents a feasibility challenge in the relatively near term. The feasibility concern may affect the ability to redevelop the site at all in the near to midterm, given that the project must also account for the significant cost of demolishing the existing Samtrans office building. In addition, requiring 90 units per acre minimum may diminish the project's ability to accommodate ground floor commercial space while still staying in an optimally feasible construction type. The commercial space would add to the vitality of downtown, but if it means that the project must build higher to achieve 90 units per acre, the added cost of that greater height may make the retail space not financially worthwhile. Similarly, developing to a minimum 90 per acre may be challenging for projects that seek to provide larger units suitable for families, because a given building envelope will allow a greater number of studios or 1-bedroom units or a lesser number of 2 to 3 bedrooms. Given that state funding sources for affordable housing have recently prioritized larger units for families, it may be challenging for a developer to achieve the minimum density and qualify for competitive funding.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Are there any more comments here in the room? Alrighty, Lynette, do we have any raised hands?
Yes, we have 6 hands raised so far. The first caller is Xiao Zhu.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, committee members and commissioners. My name is Xiao. My family live on Walnut Street. I find most of this plan exciting and really forward-looking. We fully support the continued growth of downtown San Carlos. However, 2 comments on the impact to 900, 10,000, 1,000, 1,100 blocks of Walnut Street, which is outside of the downtown core, but it's really the heart of the residential community. First, as far as we are aware, the city's recent update to reduce rear setbacks from 30 feet to 20 feet behind single-family home did not give notice for residents to comment and react. Since we're just talking about 2 blocks of residential area, is 30 feet to 20 feet reduction really going to improve number of units by 10%? Second, we again respectfully ask that building next to a single-family homes be limited to 3 stories. You can check. Historically, every building project next to the 900 to 1100 Walnut Street block has been 3 stories. This standard will be consistent with precedent and again will safeguard the value of the residential neighborhood. We simply ask the Commission to balance growth with fairness for the many families who already live on the block. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Lynette, who would be next?
Next caller is Aaron Frisler.
Go for it, Aaron. Aaron, are you on?
Aaron, you may speak.
Are you on mute?
You have been unmuted.
Should we move to the next person? And Aaron, you can get ready to speak following whoever's up next.
So next caller is Sonia Eltz.
Thank you, Sonia. Go ahead.
Hi, I really appreciate this plan and how much outreach has been done by the city in getting, resident input on what we'd like to see downtown. It's been an incredible process, and I'm really, really thankful. I just wanted to also appreciate the attention to micromobility and alternative transportation ways to get to downtown. And glad that they're being balanced with the parking needs for folks who come from further away or mobility challenged. And specifically, I just want to make sure that I think the shared vehicle, driverless vehicle, the Waymo type vehicle is on our horizon with people owning fewer cars of their own, doing more car shares, and just not needing to own 2 to 3 to 4 cars per household. So to whatever extent that, I'm sure that's been taken into account in this plan, but I do look forward to hopefully eventually returning the curbs to micromobility lanes, because I've seen so many older folks, for example, in their little electric scooters using these lanes. It just gives them so much more access in our town, and younger kids, and it's just very exciting to see more micromobility avenues, and I applaud the city for its attention to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lynette, do you want to give Aaron a try again?
Yes.
Aaron.
You may speak, Aaron. It looks like your phone is unmute or muted.
Aaron, can you hear us? We cannot hear you. So we could go to the next person then, Lynette.
Next person is Stacy.
Stacy, we'd like to hear your comment.
Hi, this is Stacy Newvoot. I am also a resident of Walnut Street, and would like to thank the commission for their time. I think there's some clarifications that need to be made, as we were very involved in the 1040, 1052 Laurel Street development and continue to be very excited about future development. I think it's disingenuous because we did not receive notice of the setbacks change, and those are pretty significant if you're adjacent to a single family home. There's only 3 blocks here in this downtown plan that are adjacent to single family homes on Walnut Street. The reason why I want to add that is the current downtown plan actually extends only to Arroyo Street, and these 3 blocks have been added in this. So we are now considered part of the downtown core, which is new. Furthermore, East San Carlos, which is a far more industrial and less developed neighborhood than Howard Park, which is where these 3 blocks of Walnut Street currently are, have a special exclusion for 3 floors. Why is that neighborhood treated differently than these 3 blocks that have now been lumped into the downtown current plan? I find that just very disappointing that the city would choose to have these 3 very special blocks of Walnut Street treated so differently than any other single family home. So I urge the commission to do the right thing. You're all property owners. Stand with us and don't treat us differently than the rest of San Carlos. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lynette, who would be next?
We can try Aaron again.
Aaron. I hear like a little blip, blip, but I don't hear words. So Aaron, I don't know if you could hear us, but maybe log out and log back in, and that might help. Is there a 4th person, Lynette?
There are no more hands raised. Oh, there is one just raised, calling from Samsung.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I have 2 concerns. One is that the first block of San Carlos Avenue is going to be blocked. And I feel like you said that is the entryway of San Carlos.
We lost you. Did you accidentally hit your mute button?
No, I didn't hit anything, but it said the host muted me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So anyways, I'm concerned that the first block of St. Carlos Avenue will be blocked because that's our entryway. As of right now, when it's commute hours, it's already really packed along Holly as well as St. Carlos Avenue. And so limiting that or closing that will make Holly Street even more packed. And so I'm really concerned about traffic flow there. As you were talking about building a new building for residences in in the Caltrain building, yeah, I just don't know where to go with that. And parking is really essential too if we're going to add, residential areas. The second question or concern I have is, like you said, for the bike lanes. If you see Amazon in Seattle, they have really defined bike lanes for people. And it would be nice if we had something like that along Laurel Street, since we won't have any cars and we won't, and we might have the space. We might not have the space in other parts of the city, but if we start there, maybe we can figure something out. That's it.
Thank you. All right, Aaron, one last try. All right, Lynette, is there anyone else? I guess I will say, Aaron, we did receive your letter. Is there anyone else?
So far, there are no hands raised.
All right, and anyone in the room? Going once. All righty, so with that, I think that we can close public comment if we would like to entertain a motion.
I move to close public comment.
I second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Tapias?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Yes.
And Chair Clements is excused.
All righty, so we could organize our feedback in these chapters again if we think that that would be helpful. All right, and then if there's any public comment that we heard along the way that you'd like to ask staff to clarify on, any sort of facts that you want clarified, we could pick those up as part of our discussion. Who would like to begin? Chapters 1 and 2.
I can go.
Thanks.
Thank you for creating a very comprehensive plan. I also appreciate all the effort that went into printing out the stationery, creating the packet. It's a big endeavor, so thank you for that. Overall, it looks like in terms of vision principles and framework for urban design and policy in that realm, there has been some comment from the neighbors of the main downtown. So I appreciate the community participation to that end. And overall, for chapters 1 and 2, I'm supportive of whatever's outlined in the plan. So thank you.
Can I make just some general comments that for me are probably going to apply to
Yes.
all chapters. So first, thank you to the staff for putting together what Commissioner Anand just mentioned, lengthy and thorough documentation and really detailed explanation for a really big transformative project for our city over the next 20 years. So thoughtfully considered. So thank you. It's intentionally considered phased plan, which I really like. I like the idea of thinking about our city in an updated and modernized way, and kind of a way in which is flexible over time with however our city changes and however our citizens choose to use our public spaces. I feel there's some flexibility there. And it'll be a positive economic development benefit for the city, so hopefully driving more traffic into our local businesses and attracting more people who want to live here and come in and spend their time, dollars, and and bring their families here. So I think that's important. Lastly, I think it's inviting, from a plan perspective, I think it's inviting, it incorporates nature, it's functional, it's flexible, and it has an eye towards resiliency around both changes in our natural world, especially, as well as changes in our people movement and usage patterns. So thank you very much.
Thank you. No general comments or 1 and 2? So I too really appreciate this document and its framing. I know there's a lot of different, state law changes and high injury network plans with potential funding sources hooked to them, and all these different requirements and opportunities. And so this really does help bring those together to set forth this vision. It is aspirational. It is going to be hard. There's lots of details, but I do think that it does set out a plan that helps to reflect what we've heard from the community and the values that we have. I think things are going to change whether or not we choose to change them, and so it's important to have these documents that change things in a way that supports our values and our role here in the region to provide additional housing. I did have one that I'd like to talk about or make a recommendation. I thought that the verbiage with respect to the Ohlone history was a little passive. We led to the dispersal of tribes and the eventual shrinking, and I think that makes it seem like it was an inevitable process rather than really being a little more honest about the impacts of the Spanish colonization and the fact that the Ohlone people were forcibly displaced and that they're, led to severe population decline. In many parts of the region, there's bands of Ohlone that no longer exist because of the impacts of colonization. So I would like that particular sentence to just be a little more bold and honest than it is currently. So that's my only specific feedback on 1 and 2 in terms of any changes, but I really appreciate the framing of 1 and 2. Do you want to do 3, 4, 5, and 6 together? Let's do it. Who's next?
Okay, yeah. Regarding Chapter 3, I have really 3 recommendations or conditions based on the plan. Two of them are administrative. I think they're pretty simple, and the third is procedural. I think Greg can handle this third one. So the first is correct the MUN 40 height to 50 feet. I don't think that's going to be any issue for the second would be require staff to return within 60 days with an access mitigation plan for the 700 block Laurel closure after meeting with counsel for San Carlos Property LLC, the landlord for U.S. Bank. And the third would be to incorporate Samtrans requested map and coordination updates.
Thank you. Anyone want to respond to any of those comments or share new comments?
I just want to say thank you for accommodating the idea of bike lanes and non-vehicular mobility into this plan. So as a cyclist, I keep saying I'm a cyclist. I feel like I represent the cyclist community in San Carlos. Anyway, I really appreciate both in this plan and prior conversations the thoughtfulness with which you all have approached non-vehicular movement around the city. And then I think it was I'm sorry, I can't remember if it was either an in-person comment or an on-the-phone comment today about autonomous vehicles and how we will choose to accommodate those, and thinking about drop-off points and pickup points for future autonomous vehicle transport, I think is kind of an interesting and important future-proofing piece for this. So some thoughts there, perhaps some way to accommodate that in the plan.
Thank you.
I look at it as a remodel. All homes are getting remodeled in San Carlos. This is our living room, and we are remodeling this space, and not everybody will be happy, and there will be different point of views, but at the end of the day, the remodel needs to happen. So it's going to be a big undertaking, and I'm excited about it, as long as we can take the entire community together and be proactive in terms of communication. That would be one thing that I would highly, highly recommend. I think in this case, overdoing is better than underdoing, and making sure that all stakeholders are in the loop from the community would be key to the process. In terms of parking and transportation, I'll reiterate the need for any anticipatory parking disruptions or parking spillovers, because this project will go on in phases. So to just to minimize disruption to any of the business owners or neighbors, adjacent streets, whatever, like, as long as we can keep the community in mind, I think it will be a win-win for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. So that leaves me. So I think a few things with respect to the U.S. Bank parcel. You know, in my opinion, there was the process that Greg described. I think that it is a long-term plan. The closure isn't going to happen tomorrow, and there might be opportunities to sort of reconfigure and re-envision. And so I would not need staff to come back with a 60-day report out on that personally. With respect to the SamTrans request, I was honestly somewhat disappointed to see this being daylighted through this forum. I think that you do have the ability to leverage the density or the concessions and density bonuses. You know, I don't think that downzoning one parcel, which is what a 60 would do to it, I don't think that's something that could be really accommodated within this parcel. And I think from a long-term perspective, having that higher goal is more consistent with where we're hoping to head. So that's where I stand on that one. With respect to San Carlos Ave, you know, I think that the Streetscape Master Plan really, you know, set some of these in motion, but in response to the comments about it being blocked, that particular segment of street is so hostile if you're a bike rider. It's not incredibly pleasant as a pedestrian. It's a place where I used to be afraid my kid was going to ride his bike over to the east side because of the high injury network aspect of it. And so for me, there's trade-offs, and the trade-offs of having safer streets for our kids to ride, you know, from the east side to Britton Acres. Those kinds of things I think are, I'm willing to take a few more minutes to get to 101 and take Holly, and that's kind of where I stand on that kind of trade-off. The construction will be impactful, and you know, we'll need to work through that. But I think at the end of the day, taking the opportunity to really connect to the train station. It's such an amenity. It's an opportunity for us as a region to, you know, be a place that people come to, and getting to walk off a train and into a beautiful and vibrant downtown. San Carlos Ave provides us that opportunity. So that's where I sit with that one. And then a little bit weedy, I thought that PTDM-5 and 7, those seemed redundant to actions, PTDM 2A and 2B. So maybe just a little cleanup there. But overall, I really appreciate all of the detail that's gone into this. I think with respect to the Walnut parcels, the change of height is not before us within this plan. That was set in place, it sounds like, quite a long time ago. And the setback change, which I believe it's a 28-foot height limit on the setback, so it's kind of the same as the height limit behind, and then there's a step back to the next story, so it's not a wall of 50 feet. But I believe that's not before us today as something that is under consideration, if I'm incorrect on that. Yeah. So that's what I have on 3 through 6. Anything more in response to me? 7, 8, 9, and 10. And let's do 11 while we're at it.
All right, can I bring it home with my last comment? Since we're going through 11. I just want to echo what Commissioner Anand mentioned about over-communication and transparency around making these plans both available and open for comment. As we talked about at the very beginning, I love the process of the inclusive process and kind of different stakeholder opportunities that you created for comment and input and iteration. I'd only ask that, though we can't please everyone, because as with the house remodel, we're not all going to agree on the details and the colors and the et cetera. But I do think that we can offer and make an effort to make people heard, take the feedback, and action on the feedback where applicable and where it makes sense with respect to the rollout of the plan and the guidelines that we have as a city. And I think that idea of over-communication and inclusion of opinion is so important in continuing to build trust and excitement in our city.
The goal is lofty, and like any other remodel, we know one thing that's common among all remodels is that they go over budget and over time. So with that, the 125 million is a lofty goal, and plus add to it inflation and unforeseeable expenses. So I do approach it with a little bit of skepticism. It is like much in line with Commissioner Kaniewski's comment that it is a very lofty goal, but is it achievable? Perhaps, as long as we keep our vision straight and communicating, and perhaps maybe even loop in certain community members. It could be bigger projects that come into the city later. We could get some creative ways of more funding. 20 years is a long time to see what happens in the city. Even and the one thing that on lines of future proofing, if we can leverage some sort of technology or new sort of planning or tools to actually make our processes efficient in terms of cost and as well as time savings, I think that will be phenomenal. So my recommendation would be to just be on top of the latest in tech if we can shave off some time and money using that, and also get creative about certain funding sources to achieve our goal. Thank you.
Okay, so for all chapters.
If you want to take them in bite sizes
Yeah.
on your own, certainly do.
Well, first, let me say that Vice Chair Bundy, you convinced me to withdraw my previous comment on the 60-day plan, so I'll withdraw that comment. I think that makes good sense, what you said. So, but with regard to administration and implementation, again, I go back to the funding, and we talked about this during the meeting. If I would like to recommend that the staff prepare a downtown finance and phasing appendix and update it annually with the capital improvement plan, just like we talked about. I mean, I think that'd be something that would be reasonable, and I would like to add it to the plan as a recommendation. But on the positive side, again, I reiterate all the comments that the other commissioners made. I think it's a great plan. I do think there was a lot of outreach. You're not going to please everybody, but I'm really excited about the plan and getting it implemented in the future and living in San Carlos.
Maybe a clarifying question with respect to that funding and financing plan. Does that fit within the city budgetary process? And as a planning commission, I recall that we had a role in reviewing certain capital projects in that budget, but kind of what's the ongoing processes that you use for this sort of thing and our role in that?
Sure. So every couple of years, staff brings before the commission a general plan consistency I guess, a request for the commission to make a general plan consistency finding that the capital improvement projects are consistent with the general plan, and in this case, including any applicable specific plans. And so the city operates on a 2-year budget cycle, so all of the new capital improvement projects or amendments to existing capital improvement projects are presented to the commission, and the commission would just need to find that, not just, course, but the action is to make a consistency finding that the projects are consistent with plans, meaning the city's not going to build something that's the general plan isn't directing us to, or the parks element isn't directing us to, or in this case, the downtown specific plan. So that's something that we do on a regular basis, so the commission would be able to see new capital improvement projects come online through that particular regular activity.
Thank you. And then as far as budgeting of this, that's a
city council matter, the budget and how to pay for it and how to accumulate or raise funds or seek grants. All that is at the staff level or the council level.
Thank you for that clarification. Follow-up questions?
Yeah, so I don't want to do something that's redundant or not necessary. So could you comment on, I mean, is there processes in place between the city council and what you're already doing? I mean, is it not, would it be redundant to ask for that in this plan, ask for an appendix to this plan?
Or, I mean, it could be an appendix, but maybe what it is really is an offshoot of the plan, meaning it could be an action item within the specific plan that directs, the city to, make regular updates or progress and evaluate the financing strategy. That may be something that the city would be doing anyway, but we could certainly look into adding an action plan like that and taking that recommendation forward to the city council that the commission would like to see this type of action, and certainly pass that on to the council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All righty. So it's clearly a vision, right? But the public realm improvements, I really appreciate the closure of the 700 block, but right now it feels like you're walking either through somebody else's living room or in somebody's backyard. So to kind of restore some of that space to the public realm, I think will be greatly appreciated. I think having more passive things to do, like furniture for kids to climb on and those sorts of things, are really going to improve that space. And I'm excited about the art. With respect to the sustainability and resiliency, I have one request that for actions IU7A and IU7C, which are related to stormwater systems, the language be added that they should be designed for future conditions. So considering the impacts of climate change for the planning horizon of the infrastructure. So just future conditions would be what I'd like to see added there. And then I think in general for this chapter, Lisa, we had talked about possibly having a little more crosswalking to other engineering standards and codes that are not listed in the front end, but are, the city has its own design guidance for all this stuff. So just referencing that. And that's all I had on this. So does the commission wish to discuss anything further? Do you feel as though you are ready to entertain any resolutions, any of the 4 resolutions, or all of the 4 resolutions? All right, so the next steps, you've received our direction. If we adopt, then this will proceed to City Council on November 24th, 2025. This is a notice for the members of the public. You can access the plan at sancarlosdowntownplan.com, and you can email advanceplanning@cityofsancarlos.org. So there are 4 motions in front of us. We need to take them sequentially and not as a bundle. So could I entertain a motion on the first one?
I move to approve a resolution recommending the City of San Carlos, the San Carlos City Council adopt a resolution to approve the addendum to the 2045 General Plan Reset Environmental Impact Report. And
I second.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Tapias?
yes.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Yes.
And Chair Clements is excused.
And am I correct? We need to take them individually. All right. So number 2.
I move to approve a resolution recommending the San Carlos City Council adopt a resolution to amend the San Carlos General Plan land use map, land use element, and circulation and scenic highways element.
A second?
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Tapias?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Yes.
And Chair Clements is excused.
Number 3, regarding the zoning map. Do I entertain a motion?
I move to approve a resolution recommending that the San Carlos City Council introduce an ordinance to amend the San Carlos zoning map and municipal code Title 18 zoning ordinance to codify the downtown specific plan.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Tapias?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Yes.
And Chair Clements is excused.
And the final item regarding the downtown specific plan.
I move to approve a resolution recommending this San Carlos City Council introduce an ordinance to adopt a downtown specific plan.
And is there a second?
I second.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Tapias?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bundy?
Yes.
And Chair Clements is excused.
Thank you very much, staff, for all your hard work. And once again, thank you to members of the public who've been participating throughout the process and to the consulting team. Thanks all. Item number 8, reports on correspondence and general information. Andrea, do you have a report on recent City Council actions?
I do. At the last City Council meeting, the council adopted the ordinance for 789 Old County Road, which was the project you reviewed about a month ago, and also adopted some building and fire code updates.
Great. Item number B, Planning and Transportation Commission comments or reports. I'll start with one. In my professional capacity at One Shoreline, I provided a Planning and Transportation Commission training, which Commissioner Tapias was able to attend, where we talked about requirements for sea level rise planning that have been promulgated by the state, kind of updates on what we're doing on the coast side and the bay side. So appreciated your attendance, and the staff, Akansha was there as well. So thank you for sending staff. Does anyone else have any reports?
I just want to say thank you for you and your team for putting that on. It was super informative, and as a new commissioner, I really appreciated learning that. So thanks.
Yeah, those are great. When we get the chance to take advantage of those, and they're, I think, always looking for suggestions as to what we might want to learn more about. Anything from anyone else? Correspondence?
There were several comments provided prior to the meeting on the downtown specific plan. Those were all sent to the commission and published online as well as supplemental materials for the public.
Thanks. And that letter that we've received on the Britton Avenue projects, will you be able to provide an update either to her or to us as kind of what the process and timing of that one would be?
Yes, we can speak with Public Works and find out what that is. And actually, I'd like to use that opportunity as well, just to remind the commission, and everyone's been doing this, if you do receive outside communication, to make sure to copy staff so that we can either forward it to the correct staff person or distribute to council if it's part of a item on the agenda and published.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not assume that each other, if we receive the same thing, are forwarding it. Correct. Yeah. All right, and then any other comments, reports, or updates on projects?
Yeah, just wanted to provide some updates for your next meeting, which is on the 17th of November. 808 Alameda is requesting an extension of their approval. So this was the, it's not referred to as the Black Mountain property anymore, but was back then. Several townhomes, they're requesting an extension to their approvals. So that will be coming before you on the 17th. And then also CCAG and the San Mateo County Transit Authority will be doing a presentation for the Planning Commission that evening as well.
Thank you so much. And with that, we can adjourn. I get to use this. Thanks all.